Good evening, ladies and gents. Good day, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to Splendid Isolation number 23. And I'm going to do what I do every week and play us a bit of a tune. And this one is from Newfoundland in Canada.
They crossed the broad Atlantic in the brave Florizel. On the sands of Suvla they entered into hell, and on those bloody beaches the first of them fell. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me, and it's over the mountains and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Petite. You'll find the hunt in Flanders and at Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. The call came from London for the last July drive. To the trenches with the regiment, prepare yourself to die. The roll call next morning, just a handful survive. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me, and it's over the mountains and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Petite. You'll find the hunt in Flanders and at Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. The stone men on Water Street still cried for the day when the pride of this city went marching away. 1,000 men slaughtered to hear the king say, enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. So it's over the mountains and over the sea. You brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Petite. You'll find the hunt in Flanders and at Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. So it's over the mountains and over the sea. Come brave Newfoundlanders and join the Blue Petite. You'll fight the hunt in Flanders and at Gallipoli. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me. Enlist you Newfoundlanders and come follow me.
Okay, that was about the Newfoundland Regiment, which fought very gallantly in World War I. And it was from this excellent channel. Where are we? There. I would suggest everyone goes and subscribes to Patriotic Archive, which is full of some really nice traditional military and naval tunes from not just from Britain and the Old Commonwealth, but from all over the world. So there we go. Okay, guys, I'm going to start with the Albion because this is only his second appearance on the stream, and ask if he's got anything particular to bring up to start our conversation this evening.
Well, do we want to cover the return of certain Blair?
We can. I mean, if that's what you'd like to speak about, please go for it.
I don't know about like to speak about, but it's certainly something worth noting. Just how he managed to weasel his way back into the screens of both UK and US television, and I don't know if you saw the Alistair Campbell interview. It's just
yeah, I only saw the stuff that Academic Agent did about it, to be honest with you, because I don't watch mainstream TV these days. But I
No,
saw the academic agent program about it, and I must say that a couple of months ago I was absolutely shocked when Nigel Farage endorsed Blair. I have to say that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. But there we go.
I don't know if any of you remember, but last week I mentioned that my boss, just out of the blue, brought up Tony Blair at work. And I was like, this is a guy that never talked about politics before, like ever, to me. And just out of the blue, just started going on about how good it would be if Tony Blair came back. And I thought, where's that come from?
Oh my God.
It's already working.
Yeah,
the hound of hell, Tony Blair. Jesus.
This is it's interesting because I think that culture has kind of been in stasis for quite some time. It feels like everything could have been from the previous 20 years, but I feel like there's a particular nostalgia now for that sort of very late 90s, early 2000s period, which obviously would be getting in the zeitgeist. Oh, wasn't that a hopeful time? Wasn't that a more positive time? And then suddenly, out of the blue, Blair appears, and he has this complete softball interview with his spin doctor.
Interview in inverted commas.
Interview. I mean, it was the most blatant endorsement I've ever seen. It was let's talk about how amazing your book is. And in your book, you mentioned how good a spin doctor I was, but can you clarify your statement? I mean, yeah, I hate to use the language, but it was a circle jerk between the two of them. It was hideous to watch, and I don't know how. And out of nowhere, whatever her name is, Susanna, just bringing up this kind of feminist talking point, and I think it must have been staged because he's kind of coming in from an angle where he's saying, well, you know, I'm of the left, but I'm not of the progressive left. They've gone too far. I would never take things as far as they.
Have people forgotten when the Labour Party memo that said when they opened the doors absolutely wide to mass third-board immigration and said that they were going to rub the British people's noses in diversity? Have people forgotten that? That was Tony Blair's government.
Well, people didn't even really know about it at the time, did they? I mean, it was all expertly covered up as it was.
Yes, but they should know about it now. They should know about it now.
Yeah, but the media just don't talk about it, though, do they?
Well, fine. That's why we are, I guess. I guess that's why we are talking about it. But I mean, look, there is a paper-thin difference between Alexander Johnson and Tony Blair in real terms. They're almost identical in their policies. I mean, the idea that Alexander Johnson is in any way, shape, or form an actual conservative is frankly ridiculous. But there we go.
I can't actually think of a single statement that one of them could say that the other wouldn't be able to say with exactly the same tone.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to add to it, and I actually think that the correct response at present is to ignore him. Ignore him as in these memes that are coming out, you know, with him looking like Gollum and everything like that. You know, I understand it and it's entertaining, but I think that even negative publicity for him at the moment is completely intentional to try and get him back in the conversation. Sure. So I think the correct response at the moment is in wider conversation with people, just to try and keep him stum as much as possible.
Totally agree. Adamant, anything you want to bring up particularly today?
No, I was actually going to bring up about Tony Blair too, but yeah, what else is there really?
Well, I was saying just before we got on air, I was looking at the BBC News website, and I do that just before we go on air every week. And the thing that stood out to me this week, well, there were two things actually. One was apparently equality for women is going backwards, and the BBC illustrated this with a photograph of a white woman with mixed race children. no surprise there, I suppose. So, well, why did that not surprise me? And the other thing is they're going on about Princess Diana and the BBC, and like BBC are being all supposedly apologetic about this. And I have to say, like, as far as I'm concerned, Princess Diana was a whore, but that's just me.
Well, by what metric are they saying that equality is going down?
Oh, I didn't read the article, mate. I just looked at the headlines. I've got no interest in equality.
Oh, right.
Going down or not.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of interested because, I mean, they kind of flip on this position a lot. But one of the things that you kind of notice when you look at a lot of the data is that equality, as most people measure it, goes down between the gender when times get better in other ways. So like one of the things they point out are like, I think this is one of Jordan Peterson's talking points, right? Is that Scandinavian countries have like less gender equality than other countries in Europe and around. And I saw this article once. It might have been on what's that paper called, Foreign Policy or whatever. But where they basically talked about how like there's quite high gender equality in some of these African states simply because women are willing to move to better paying countries and take better paying professions, even if it means putting back having a family, just because they need the money and they want to aspire to more.
Well, I mean, that could be. I mean, the only thing I'll say is like when I used to visit Zulu Amizi, and Amizi is a Zulu like homestead kind of thing. When I used to visit them, you would quite often see the women in the fields with a baby wrapped up on their back, working on the field with a hoe, while the chaps were sitting there drinking beer. So no doubt that's equality. But the BBC couldn't say anything about that, of course, because it's not white people. So it's not Europeans, it's not British people, it's Black Africans. So obviously they're judged by different criteria. So
following up on what you said, Asim, and I'm pretty sure that similar to what you mentioned, probably saw the same thing, that several governments in Africa had a higher proportion of females in the government compared to males, and they were using this as a metric to say how unjust Europe is. And the correct answer to that is, do you really think that's a correct metric if you're getting a country that has 80% female genital mutilation on a higher chart of equality to you? I mean, do you not think maybe you're looking at the wrong statistics here? But
I'd also look at like where's the money going, because a lot of the times in Africa, the people who are in the government, it's all to do with relatives and friends who they can funnel money into. There's a great deal of corruption and nepotism involved, and I'd say it probably has more to do with that than anything else. But that's just me. I just lived in Africa for quite a number of years, so I probably don't know what I'm talking about. Joe, what would you have to say this evening, sir?
I don't really have anything to add on this particular topic, really. I'm actually quite ignorant of it because I've not owned a TV for like 8 years, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to get the UK news here anyway. So,
but you could if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could do that.
I could get the illegal Sky feed and all that kind of thing. But,
BBC and all that. Yeah, it's very easy to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm just like you. I'm just not interested. The culture's dead, and the news is just an endless litany of nonsense and junk. Yep. That's almost like a non-issue, non-news item. It's just the same thing over and over again.
What I think is that, like most of the mainstream media in Britain and all over the Western world, it's the same in Australia. It's certainly the same in the US, etc. Nearly all of it is basically anti-straight white male propaganda these days. Like everything from the adverts to the shows to the movies, all of it is basically anti-straight white male propaganda to one degree or another.
Yeah, which is which is essentially what Academic Agent and Charlemagne picked up on last night. It's actually one of the first streams that I've watched from somebody else in a very long time, actually, because I'm not really subscribed to anyone, so I just happened to catch it. But they effectively said the same thing, that what more is there to say? We just live in a society. It's not a problem where I live, but certainly in sort of like Northern European countries, where white men in particular are disprivileged. One thing that sort of strikes me as being odd is the fact that people still watch TV. That is,
I agree.
Or
I agree.
is terrestrial TV actually in largely secular and terminal decline? I'd like to see the ratings numbers from Barb.
I think it's older people, isn't it? Isn't it mostly older people, Sojo, that watch it?
Yeah, I believe that viewing statistics are falling off a cliff with younger generations.
But what's interesting about that is that I would imagine that if terrestrial TV skews towards the older generation, they're generally more conservative anyway. So that makes it even more perplexing that they would be watching it. But I certainly know.
I think there's a lot of little old ladies who basically use it as company.
But you also think that there's an element of clickbait in a sense that it's so outrageous, the things that they say, that there's a kind of masochistic viewing pleasure that people get from it. In the same way that we're talking about it, it's like sort of masochism in a way.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Hate watching.
Hate watching. That's yeah.
I don't know, man. I just like my late woman used to watch EastEnders sometimes, right? Which was a show I always detested. But if you look at EastEnders, like the white Londoner Cockney people just don't live there anymore. There aren't any.
Well, that's actually really funny, because in many ways EastEnders is not representative of London at all, because the TV program has an overrepresentation of white people.
Yep, it does. Absolutely,
which is really quite funny.
Yep, it is. Absolutely right. Yeah, if you go to the East End of London these days, you will find virtually no white people at all.
Yeah, and of course that's because white people make up a large viewing demographic of that program, so it has to be. I mean, that's a funny sort of quirk of inverse, the inverse of the situation where actually that particular program, white people are being privileged relative to the context that the program's set in. So I mean that's funny, but I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. I just, but of course it's done on purpose, because it's pretending that this stuff is what's going on, And of course everyone there is they all get on, and the people of various races are all wonderful, and it's just basically bullshit,
That's. I mean, listen. I mean, I can't pretend to. I can't make the claim that I watch EastEnders on a regular basis, but I have seen it, and my impression of it is that basically it is everything that could possibly go wrong in a relationship and familial relations takes place within that program. It's like
yeah, absolutely, but it's always like on the personal basis rather than anything to do with race or gender or wherever the hell you come from. It's just all personal stuff, you understand?
Well, you don't think that they would touch on? I would have thought that they would actually touch on racial issues.
Only to the extent white people are bad.
Yeah. So I would imagine, again, I'm simply guessing, but when something pops up in the news that's sort of relevant and contemporary, that they would slot it in somehow, kind of like which George Floyd thing.
I haven't seen this show for like 9-10 years. Let me tell you.
Does anybody else know?
But unfortunately, I may be the most up to date on EastEnders, not through any desire of my own. But yes, the ex used to watch it quite a bit, but they do. I mean, obviously they film quite a while in advance, so it can take some time to catch up occasionally. Although there were, from memory, a couple of times where they did strangely sync up, despite that. But Yeah, it's a very feminine interpretation of interpersonal conflict, as I think Iron Duke kind of mentioned, that you're not going to have sort of street gangs going at each other and like deaths of that kind of abrupt violence. It's all I don't know it. I can't remember any of the people's names, but it's all, you know. Sue is frustrated because Darren is dating a Muslim, and that would be their kind of that would be their storyline when it comes to any kind of racial issue. It'd be a very one-on-one personal issue that is then resolved, you know, in a way that would make it more multicultural. It wouldn't be street gangs kidnapping each other, stabbing each other, selling drugs to each other. That, you know, you don't have that apart from this very feminized version of it.
Yeah, it's a woman's show. It's a woman's show for sure.
Has anyone watched the reasonably recent Guy Ritchie movie, The Gentleman?
No.
I've heard that is far more based than it has any right to be.
Is this the one with Matthew McConaughey as a drug dealer?
Yes, the drug dealer.
Yeah, I have seen that. I've seen that, yeah.
It's kind of weird, isn't it, that if you were to watch all of Guy Ritchie's movies, sort of as time went by, he doesn't actually say, it's kind of weird because the city in the movie, he doesn't say what city it is. Like, it doesn't explicitly come out and say what city it is, and it could literally be any city in Britain.
Yeah.
So it kind of reflects the sort of globalist shell of a modern city that we actually see, even if I don't think he realizes what exactly he's putting on screen. And he doesn't, like, there's like a gang of youths in it with machetes who I don't think any of them are white, but they're kind of ethnically ambiguous all around.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of weird how you could watch, let's say, Lock, Stock, and then that, and it is actually kind of an accurate reflection of London, both then and now, and yet the films are so drastically different in the way they depict it.
I think that Guy Ritchie is not political. I think really is the issue, that he sees the truth, or at least he's far less political than most other people. He sees the truth and then reflects it in his film and doesn't really think much of it. You know, the Sherlock Holmes films. There's a little bit of echo somewhere, I think. But the Sherlock Holmes films, I don't think there's a single diverse character in those at all. It's all white, you know, which would perfectly reflect the time. But I don't think that he would even take that into consideration. It would just be like an attitude of, well, you know, this is when it's set, so I'll make it an all-white cast. I don't think that it's political either way with Guy Ritchie, just because he seems to, as you say, kind of change with the times of when it's set.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no actual message about any of this stuff in the film. It's just weird how, like, he's managed to keep up with the times, and you can see that in his films, and yet that like there's no issue made about this. Like, there was no articles when that film came out saying about how it shows any troubling this or problematic that.
I think that's because the particular gang that you're referring to is in many ways glorified in that film, because I don't want to give any spoilers. And
are you referring to the one that raids the drug farm?
Yeah, and they essentially
I actually meant the one in the underpass where he tries to buy the phone off of them because he needs to get that phone because it's got the video of that dead person on it.
Oh, who falls out of the building? Yeah, the Russian guy.
And he chases that kid, and they go into the underpass, and there's all these sort of machete-wielding teenagers under there.
I thought that was the same gang.
I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's a different gang.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Yeah, that's.
I mean, even when it does show the gang that you were talking about, that's kind of like there's a white guy there, and there's a black guy, and there's sort of like a bunch of, I don't know, like Pakistani or Indian types. And and they all get along, and they're under the purview of this Irish guy, and in this boxing gym, and it's all, and that's sort of like very much a liberal dream of sort of a diverse working class neighborhood.
Yeah, did anyone ever see like mixed race gangs? Because I've never seen one, to be honest.
No.
That's not the way it works. Like you used to see them in Hollywood 1980s American movies about New York. You know, there'd be these mixed race gangs, purely liberal fiction, basically.
I don't even think the Warriors had a mixed race gang in, apart from the Warriors themselves, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Warriors. That was one I was thinking of. You know, when they used to wear those silly headbands and look really gay. But yeah, like you don't get mixed race gangs. Gangs are almost always of one race.
Yeah,
because they're gangs. You know.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing, though. He glosses over it completely, and pretends it isn't there, or touches on it from a completely apolitical sort of stance. But at the same time, it is there. You can see that the city's just this sort of ethnic globo homo shell, and
deracinated totally.
Yeah, and it's not it's just present. That's all it is.
Totally agree with all of that. I'm now going to bring up something that Albion was talking to me about before we started. And Albion, I know, is doing quite well at work. And I know our mate Sojo here is also doing pretty well in his own business. And I think Adam also is. And we have a lot of very young men who kind of like watch this show and what have you. And I think the Albion made the good point that we need to be able to show these guys, look, it's perfectly possible to get forward in terms of business and all the rest of it. So I'm going to pass that on to the Albion and then ask the other people on the stream what they think about that.
Yeah, it was just something that came up in the pre-stream chat. That I think that there needs to be a focus on the real world, and I think that some of the ideals that we speak about, I think all of them are important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be involved in this. And I think that the conversations had online are great, but I think that there needs to be a focus, particularly from the younger men that may be listening, or in quote unquote the right, to focus on setting yourself up right. Particularly with work. I think that looking at some of the things that may be less interesting than discussions of the cathedral and whatever else may come up, set yourself up be productive. When it comes to, as I was saying before, I think this is what made Jordan Peterson so popular. Even if he isn't anything particularly special with what he was coming out with, he never even made himself out to be. It was all stuff that should have been taught by your father, but for a lot of people, never was.
Well, there's no father for a lot of people these days. So many single mothers, etc.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of stand up straight with your shoulders back. Get yourself in order. Get yourself fit. Get yourself having good relationships. That whether they be romantic or not. Get yourself in a good job. And I know this stuff sounds trite, but I think that sometimes people need to take a stop and actually think, I'm 5 streams in. I've been on a binge of 10 hours watching, this kind of edgy content, but I've not actually done anything with my day. So
yeah, I agree. Can I just say, look, Top Cat's in the chat, and Top Cat does some good videos on fitness, personal fitness, which I would recommend. He also does some good videos on boxing, which is something else which I think young blokes could take up very usefully. So I'm going to agree with him on that. And I think the Albion is also agreeing to some degree on let's do some good real life stuff. We talk about quite a lot demographics, and we talk about British people having children and this kind of stuff. Well, if you're going to get yourself a woman and a wife, and you're going to have babies, in order to support them, you basically got to be able to earn a reasonable living. And I think that's really where this stuff comes in.
Yeah, and if you want to look at it from a real, caveman perspective, to a large extent, it doesn't matter how much you know. If you can't attract a woman by being able to defend her if she comes up against someone that might offend her honor, let's say, what good are you? You know, and I think there's an element. I think there's an element.
Absolutely.
And I need to phrase this correctly. That a certain amount of racial mixing might be because some of the other people from other ethnicities are not as cucked as a lot of white men are, because they actually see strength in someone that's from another ethnic group. Not.
Well, let's be fair. I mean, yeah, there are these soy boy bug men, but I hope that none of us are.
No, I'm not painting everyone with the same brush, obviously, because I wouldn't want to, you know. But I'm saying that this may be when they see strength. Let's be honest, they're attracted to it, and so.
For sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So when you have people taking a knee to certain other groups, that's not a display of strength. That's a display of the utmost cuckoldry, and so they're not attracted to that. You have to actually be able to stand up and be of value to them in some way.
Well, you have to be. I mean, if you're going to have a family, you've got to be able to defend that family for sure. I mean, it's as simple as that. You know, if you're walking up the road and some dickhead comes out with something crap to your woman, you should certainly be able to turn around and say, "Get stuffed, mate." And if he doesn't, put him on the ground for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Adam and Sergio, what's your views on this? Like I said, I know that you fellas are doing pretty well at work and in business. So what do you guys have to say about this stuff?
Well, I'm not sure if I'd say I'm doing well at work, but doing okay with myself. I don't know. It's hard, especially at the moment. You know, I mean, we've just had a year of everything you probably do, all your schedule, maybe even your work, just being completely thrown up in the air. So I don't know. It's a tough one. I was quite lucky in that I sort of landed on my feet and very much landed running. I mean, it's probably a bit late now because this is all coming to an end, but obviously, you know, the best thing to do is, even when you have some downtime for anything, whether it's because you're off work sick or literally, you know, government sanctioned lockdowns for a year, you know, you've got to kind of keep some sort of routine and discipline going, especially since I've noticed a lot of workplaces now are making people work from home for at least a couple of days a week, sort of as they're sort of phasing people back.
Well, let's hope it's coming to an end. I'm not convinced of that myself, but yeah, let's hope it is.
It's in the back pocket now, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the precedent has been set. They can get rid of it now, and if they decide 3 months down the line they want to reinstate it, then what reason have people got to say no?
You know,
you know,
especially when we're invaded by aliens, you know, that's definitely going to lead to a year locked in your home.
Yes. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a War of the World scenario, and COVID is what actually kills the aliens. You know, when they open up their tripods.
If only, but yeah. So Joe, I know you're a pretty successful, basically self-employed business guy. What have you got to say about this stuff?
Well, I mean, not a lot really. I mean, my view is stars are born. They're not, stars are born. They're not made.
But there's got to be hard work involved too, surely.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you need to take somebody aside to basically, tell them to do the basic and rudimentary things in life, like, apply yourself, get a fucking job. I don't know what to say really. I mean, you're working with shit, and you can rearrange shit all you like. It's still going to be a stinking pile of shit. So
yeah, but hang on. Sojo, look, you're a bit younger. You're a bit younger than me, but I know you're probably the second oldest guy on the stream, I think. We're talking to kids of 16, 17, 18, and 19 here. Okay, so bear that in mind.
But what does that even mean? I mean, 16-year-olds, they're either smart, thick, super smart. There's going to be a whole spectrum of kids, and I'm not Clive at the youth centre who's going to take little Jimmy to the side and say, let's get those C's up to a B. I really don't. I'm not quite sure what to say. apply yourself, get good grades, and you really have to carve your own path in life.
Fine, and that in itself is kind of fatherly advice, I'd say. So, John?
Well, I suppose so. I mean, I've got a harsh attitude, but I just think think it's such obvious advice. Be the best that you can be. If it strikes me as being odd that we would have to tell people that.
Well, yeah,
if
but
you're having
you
to tell people that they are, sort of the lowest of the low.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying you just say be the best you can be. I'm saying let's have, I think, a move towards more concrete things of saying, look, take this action. Actual specific things where you kind of give it, saying that be the best you can be is completely asinine. But actual specific things where, I don't know, something like boxing, saying to someone, go, if they get involved in that, I think it's something that should be encouraged. Physical fitness might be something that isn't. It's not exactly be the best you can be. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, not to interrupt, but if you want to get into these specifics, I'm agnostic about boxing per se. So the question I would put to you would be, well, what is it about boxing, that makes that a preferable thing to pursue rather than something else?
Could I make a point here? And all right, I'm biased. My old dad loved boxing. He taught me to box very gently from about the age of 6 or 7 onwards. And I would say there's two things about boxing. First of all, it's a traditional British manly art. It's a method of self-defense, obviously, and also it gets you fit. So, like all three of those,
boys in a masculine space as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's also, you're going to the boxing gym. You're going to be around other boys like yourself who want to make the best of themselves physically. But there's also mental aspects to it, and there's a lot more involved with boxing than simply punching somebody. There's a lot of fitness and all this kind of stuff comes into it.
There's also an element. Oh, sorry, Karen.
Sorry, and also that there is, like I said, it's a traditional British manly art. So, from our point of view, it's something we should encourage, in my opinion.
Yeah,
there's but the also. Thing is, can I just make this point and then you carry on? So yeah, there's also an element of confidence that you gain through any kind of self-defense or any kind of martial art. You can carry yourself a lot more confidently in a situation. I think that
totally agree.
You're actually able to defend yourself.
Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I can actually. I don't know that, but I can imagine why that would be the case. That you would just have that. How if you, I don't know, you know the basics of judo, and you can sort of defend yourself. You're going to feel a lot more confident in general, because you know that you're never going to be physically exposed in a situation. So that's obviously a good thing.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about attracting women. Women like a guy who can handle himself and can defend them if necessary. They just do. So again, it's a plus. There are no minuses to it that I can see.
No, it's just a relative. There's a whole myriad of things that you could do: judo, taekwondo.
Absolutely.
Jiu-jitsu, boxing.
Not against any of those things, mate. The advantage of boxing from our particular point of view on this show is that it's a traditional British manly art. That's the one thing. It's not like Japanese or Asian or any of that stuff. It's British. So from that point of view, I think it's good too. It's going to get you generally fit, even if you don't use it for self-defense. And as Atman said, it's going to get you around other like-minded people, which is also a good thing. But
there are other things you can do though as well. Like
yeah, there are lots of other
boxing,
things. Yep.
boxing's a good template as well because it's just it gives you all the things you can look for, but kids can go on and find that in other things too. I mean, it's a shame the Boy Scouts aren't really a big force anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The Boy Scouts going camping, living out in nature, and all that stuff again, totally good. But it's like I think what the Albion and I were talking about before the show started was, and why the Albion mentioned Jordan Peterson, who, he gives a lot of basic bitch points, but the fact is that because partly because we have so many single mothers these days, etc., there are lots of boys who don't get basic bitch stuff that any dad of very average quality would tell them.
Yeah, and this is where I would say I completely agree, Sojay, that they are common sense, a lot of these things, but if you don't have a man in the household to tell you these things, I think they can get lost by a lot of people.
Yes, thank you. Totally what I think too.
Yeah. I mean, Duke, you actually have the analytics for your channel. I mean, what percentage of the audience is actually, 16 to 18?
A lot. And most of it's under 25. Most of it's
really?
most of it's under 25. Yeah.
Last week, it was at the smallest sample size around, but I said in the chat, 1 for a Zoomer, 2 for a millennial, and so on and so forth. And there was like 4 Zoomers to every Gen X or Boomer.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, I was surprised. I thought this channel, because I'm a bloke in my 50s, as you guys know. I thought this channel would have an older audience, but no, the majority of the audience for this channel is under 25 years old.
That's also ignoring.
Yeah, and it's nearly all male, by the way. I think it's less than 5% female.
It's also ignoring the people that lie about their age when they sign up to YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely right. So there's going to be even younger people involved. That's going to make the audience younger rather than older. So yeah, absolutely. So that's why I don't totally agree with what Sojo says in this sense. Like, I think if Sojo had a younger brother, for example, or a young chap,
I do.
Oh well, there you go. And like, if he asked you for advice, I think what the Albion and I are talking about here is the sort of thing you might say to your younger brother, leaving aside all personal stuff, obviously.
Well, the problem is that my younger brother is actually a very successful individual anyway, who
there you go. Cool.
doesn't require any advice from me on anything really. So I'm perhaps not the best, individual to be asking about these things.
All right. So what I'm thinking, Sojo, is that because I know that you are a pretty much self-employed, successful business guy who can move around Europe when you want to, you would be a good bloke to give like general advice to younger fellas,
Yeah, I would. Here's the thing. So if you're talking about careers, then one has to look at, what your earning power is, and then essentially the sort of the lifestyle choices, and then whether or not you're going to enjoy the kind of work that you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And to do this kind of research is pretty rudimentary. You just sift through all the professions that are available as a young man, figure out what the career paths are, how long it's going to take you to get to the top, what your earning power is, what your options are. Can you work remotely? Can you be self-employed? Can you be a contractor? Is this a permanent role? Is this a job that allows me location independence? Can I work in a small city in the countryside or a small town? Or am I stuck in a white collar job that's in the major metropolitan areas? These are the questions that I would suggest that most young people should be thinking about. And then you probably want to pair your academic ability with your ultimate earning potential, then sort of paired with the best lifestyle choice that you can get from your job. In terms of, is it flexible work? Is it you're going to have a nice sort of work-life balance for family in the future? these are the questions that I think are really quite pertinent. And of course, what you enjoy. And, I mean, frankly, most people don't really enjoy what they do. So you have to weigh up all of these sort of choices that you can make when it comes to picking a career. But obviously, as a young man, it's very hard because you don't know necessarily what you want to do. So in many respects, you have to sort of narrow it down in this kind of empirical and sort of merchant and middling way. So that is my sort of Anglo empirical take on careers and professions, I suppose.
That's exactly the kind of thing I was talking about, man. That's exactly what we were talking about.
We turned you into Clive at the youth centre.
You wouldn't get that kind of top quality advice from Clive at the youth centre.
No, I think all of those were spot on. I completely agree. And failing doing that kind of research, just do hands-on research in terms of go into a job and actually work your ass off. And this is from my experience. See if you're at a complete dead end and not knowing what to do, take whatever comes your way, work your ass off in it, and see if you enjoy it. And if you're in the right environment, you will get in some situations, depending on your temperament, you will get a passion for it, regardless if you're putting your heart into it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and I know we've talked on this stream before, for example, about people who are not really into academic stuff getting a trade. That's a perfectly legitimate thing for a young chap to do.
Apprenticeships.
If you're not academically inclined, get yourself a trade.
Yeah, I really think apprenticeships, I hope, make a comeback, but I think that at the moment, they're still available. And if you're not someone that's academically inclined, take advantage of it.
Well, that's interesting because Randy in the chat has got some of his own opinions on this. And he's somebody who, I think he said that he worked in procurement for sort of trade and construction services. And he basically said that it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's unless you know somebody, it's very hard to get into a trade. So there are significant barriers to entry. And also it's a very tough life in the sense that, you go from job to job. You have sort of lean stretches. You're not necessarily employed all the time, even as a sort of contractor, somebody who's not even self-employed. So there's, like I say, you really have to do a lot of due diligence and research on all of these things.
I don't know, Sergio. If you're looking,
he's saying it's cutthroat. See.
Yeah, but if you're looking at somebody who's a plumber or something like that, and you're a self-employed plumber, let's say, and obviously that's going to take you a few years to get into that position. But I mean, once you are, the fact that you go from job to job and you might go to 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 locations in a day, a lot of people would like that rather than sitting at a desk in an office.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of people don't realise that they would like that either.
Yeah,
they think that the easier office job is what they really want.
Well, it's because it's disincentivized.
Mm.
Yeah, people just don't even talk about it. Oh no, go to uni, get some useless degree which isn't going to do you any good. I mean, I'd say go to uni by all means if you're going to get a degree that's going to earn you a reasonable living afterwards. You're going to become an engineer or a scientist or whatever it might be. But if you're not academically inclined, then some of the most successful and happiest guys I know are definitely tradies. They're self-employed. They do their own stuff. They don't go to the same place every day. They have families. They have good homes. They have a good lifestyle because they're earning quite good money. It's definitely something people should think about.
I mean, I'll say that my 2 main fields that I've been in have been hospitality and the trades. And by far the people I've worked with in trades, partly because it's a more male-dominated environment, it's been such a better environment to work in. And the people are happier and earn more. And, they're people that, place your abilities. If you're not academically inclined, but you can work well with your hands, the trades are, they're what they're there for.
Yeah, and
they do get pretty beat up though.
Yeah, well, you know,
it can be hard work for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you bust your ass and you know, try and climb the ladder so that you can get a cushy job at the end of it, higher up along the chain if you're in a big company. But you know, that is going to happen. You know, some people are going to be on the tools until they're 60, and yeah, it can destroy you. But
yeah, because I mean, I've worked with quite a few brickies and roofers, and even plasterers and the rest of it. And some of those guys are like riddled with arthritis, waiting on like their third spine surgery by the time they're like 60 something. But they don't often regret it, and they have usually done okay for themselves. So.
And also, you know, it's like if you're going to do a physical job, I've done quite a lot of physical jobs, you know, and doing a physical job is quite good in some respects because it does keep you fit. And you know, there's something about like if you're earning your living from the sweat of your brow, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's not a bad thing, and it's a manly thing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just on brickies busting their back, you know, most of them wear it with a badge of pride. Like that, you know, it's more of like a war story than them trying to get sympathy for it. So
and the brickies labourers are the blokes who are really doing the hard yards, not so much the brickies. So
and there is certain. I mean, you say like wearing it like a badge of honour. There is a certain sort of thing of adventure to it. These young guys going out there like early hours in the morning onto a site or something like that. They're usually the only one of their school leaving mates that are doing something like that. So I don't know. Maybe there's an aspect to which they're covering up some of the harsher parts of the job with a bit of a sense of adventure.
I'm afraid that
Joe's going to say something here.
I'm afraid that this has a big stench and whiff of valorising the working class. Oh, I've got it hard.
They're not
it's
really
a hard life,
class,
but
though,
it's well, that's
I used to live in an area that was full of tradies, and there's all these vans everywhere, but they're all really nice houses, and it's not somewhere anyone can go and live.
Yeah, but it's talking about the sort of impact and quality of life, you know, it is a hard slog.
So, Joe, why should we not valorise the working class?
Because it's the underlying principle of we accept that these conditions are shit, but we're going to big it up because it's working class. That's my fundamental problem.
See, I don't do it I do it because it's manly, not because it's working class.
Because it's manly. I mean, the next thing we're going to be saying is, I live in a minority area and I'm fucking proud of it. Yeah, I'm part of the 5%, fucking born and bred.
No, that's not the same at all. Look, it's more like in the First World War when they were digging trenches, you know, and this young second lieutenant would try and join in. And wouldn't know how to use a shovel, you know, and one of his soldiers would have to show him because he did that as a job. It's not that. It's just what blokes can do, you know.
To my mind, it's a cope.
Yeah, no, you're looking at this in the wrong direction.
I most certainly am.
What do you think their alternative should be? That they should say, "Well, I'm going to bust my back and it's awful, and I should hate my job every day I go there." Like,
I'm saying that the alternative should be: I don't want to work. I want to make somebody else do the work. I want to have my hands on the levers of power. I want to be the ones that make the decisions in this society. I want to be the 1% top dog with his big dick swinging out, and I want to be the ones that rescue this society. That is basically my view. Not
everyone can do that, Sojo.
No, but the only people that matter in this context are the ones that can do that. Because those are the only people who can save us, quote unquote, from this situation.
Yeah, all right, I get what you're saying, but I'm not going to abandon all those people who can't save us.
No, I agree with that. That, you know, those people have got to do what they got to do in their own way,
and we should help them.
And we should help them, and I'm part of that group because I'm certainly not going to be, you know, the next Cromwell or whatever. As much as I would love to be.
For God's sake, not Cromwell, for fuck's sake.
Cromwell is absolutely based.
Piss on Cromwell, I hate it. There we go. But yeah.
What's wrong with Cromwell?
I would have been a
Yeah,
cavalier.
what is wrong with Cromwell?
I would have been a cavalier purely on principle and traditionalism.
I mean,
Explains the
sure,
position
like
of the
there's something
Irish.
about killing the king that kind of gets me the wrong way, but I don't.
No,
I
just would have been.
on Cromwell.
I would just have been on the king's side on tradition alone. Fuck Cromwell, fuck Parliament. You're talking
Right, but
about
if
you're
you
talking
had
about
been-
Parliament, for God's sake.
Right, but if you had been like fighting against Cromwell, would you really look back on the guy that defeated you with such disdain, or would you have a bit more respect for him?
No, I fucking detest him, and I would have been one of the first people who brought the king back.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, Sojo's position is learn to code, but unironically.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just think, there's guys who can do physical stuff well. There's guys who don't do physical stuff so well, and we should kind of help each other,
Well, I think it's also that those trades are going to be with us for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Always.
I don't see them going away.
Yeah, they're never going to go away.
Yeah, you can't automate that stuff. It's not possible.
It's to my mind, it's a lot of the sort of middle class white collar jobs that are very at threat. These things that this idea of accountants and bookkeepers. I mean, I think their days are numbered.
Absolutely,
their days are numbered.
Yep, I totally agree with that. I do. I totally agree with that. It's all those very, very in the middle jobs that are going to go out the window.
Yeah, they're so automatable, many of these sort of office jobs. Whereas, I'm sure at some point there will be technology that can replicate the dexterity required for plastering and whatnot and plumbing. But to my mind, from my I work in tech, I think that's a long way off. The software's a long way off, and the robotics is even further off.
And making it mobile enough to move it around to people's houses as well.
And making it cheaper than human labour.
Yeah, it's not going to happen in the foreseeable future, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I again, there's a plus for trades as well. I mean, the one thing I would say to young fellas is don't be a labourer if you can avoid it. That's probably the worst of all options. I mean, rather join the military than be a bloody labourer, because at least you may learn some useful skills that way.
Just don't go and work at Tesco on a bloody.
Well, by all means, go and work at Tesco's as a holiday job.
That's soul crushing. Those kind of jobs.
I mean, by all means, do it as a holiday or a part-time job when you're at school still or whatever. Yeah,
and I can already sense Sojay is going to say, "Why are you glorifying the labourer?"
No. I was actually going to offer a counter argument to that actually I think that working for some of these big, large, national companies like Tesco's, let's take Tesco's or Lidl as examples. But I think it's the case that Lidl and Aldi actually pay relatively good wages for the.
Yeah, they pay extremely well. I think they start off at something like £10.50, which is actually
for stacking shelves, right? Yeah, and that's going to be national. So if you wanted to have just like an easy life, nothing spectacular, living out in the countryside, working at Lidl, you could do that. And there's no reason to think that you can't sort of work your way up to be regional manager or a manager of your local store. And they're probably going to be on 45, 50k a year. I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I would imagine that that's probably ballpark for a manager of a store like that.
Yeah,
so,
if you've got a bit of brain and a bit of get up and go, I'm pretty sure you can get promoted in that.
I mean, particularly in Lidl, I don't know what it is about their staffing, but they seem to target mentally challenged individuals a lot of the time. So if you have any kind of from my experience, so not from working there, but just from shopping in there. If you have any kind of sense about you, you could probably climb the ladder quite quickly in some of those stores.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree with that. I just think, like, if you're a bloke and you're a young man what you've got to be looking for is what skills do I have, what mental and physical skills you have. What do I want to do in my life? This is a bit like what Sojo was saying earlier. And just from there, look, how can I get ahead? That's what you got to do. Like, be the best person you can be.
Yeah.
And the same goes for like dress smartly and this kind of stuff. Keep yourself fit, dress smartly. All of this is like really basic bitch common sense stuff. But a lot of young fellas don't seem to get it.
Yeah, but I also think that actually a lot of this is really very much a spiritual and philosophical journey. And that is, I think in these circles, that's kind of spat on. It's like, oh, that's gay. I'm not really interested in that. What I'm really interested in is the fact that England is sort of 30% non-white, and that's
you're right.
Black people and N-words and whatnot. Yeah. But there's to me, what it means to be right wing is that's a philosophical question. It's a question of mindset and mentality, and it's everything that we see in the world that we don't like is a symptom of not having this kind of mindset and mentality. So. These are, like I say, I think these are actually spiritual questions. What do you want to do with your life? What is life about? What is it you want to do? What do you want to be?
Agree. Yeah, totally agree.
People don't know these questions or even think to ask them. So that's the sort of deeper malaise that we're in.
I completely agree that the issues start...
So, Joe, this is what the Albion and I were talking about before the show, and why we were saying that there is a lot of young fellas who actually do need this advice. This is exactly what we were saying.
I completely agree that the issues start from a philosophical basis, but I just think that it's very easy in online circles to have the sense that you're doing something by just listening and consuming content and not actually acting it out. And I think that it's a synthesis of the philosophy and it's not even reality. It's thrusting philosophy into reality. It's actually embodying what you believe. So it's not that there's a separation. It's bringing that into being, which I think is something that Bowden would have felt quite strongly as well. That kind of bringing that power from the philosophical and thrusting it into reality. That concludes the Job Centre Plus portion of the conversation.
Adam, what have you got to say on that stuff, mate?
No, I think I've said my bit, to be honest.
Okay, somebody else.
Duke,
cover up
Duke,
while
this
I'm
is...
eating, sorry.
Okay, so while you stuff your gob with whatever it is, but this is why, and when we were talking last week about, I've got this massive gripe about the fact that we're anonymous, and to me, that's like symptomatic. It's like a symptom of like not really living. That it's this sort of cowering away from the world, and actually not acting out what it is that you are and what you want to be in the real world. It's this kind of, there's this barrier, there's this avatar of what you could be, but you never push forward and go through into the real world with it. And that's why I think for me the whole anonymous thing is a real big problem, because I think it's stopping a lot of people from actually meeting people in the real world.
Okay.
Yeah, I really
building communities and friendships.
Okay, two things. First of all, what I was eating was an antacid tablet.
Rennie's.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, look, I'm anonymous for a very good reason, because my son looks exactly like me, and he's serving as an officer in the Royal Navy. And he might get into trouble, even for these relatively, I think, ordinary broadcasts. Simple as that.
Yeah, I've got to agree, Sojay. It's something that I've kind of been. I mean, obviously, I'm a no one online, so it doesn't matter. I could show my face there, but it's when you start to gain traction that you're used as as a hate figure, like a 1984 kind of 2 minutes of hate figure, that you just kind of have to embrace it at some level and not hide behind an online avatar. And I think of people like, even obviously Bowden, but someone like Peter Hitchens, you can't even imagine him writing something anonymously. Even if he.
But there are things Peter Hitchens. But the Albion, there are things that Peter Hitchens will not touch with its 20-foot steel-tip barge pole.
Yes, but I don't think he would touch that regardless of whether or not he was anonymous. There's still a certain amount. There's still a certain amount of, I suppose, cowardice there, maybe. But yeah, it's something that, unfortunately, we've got to make a move away from, even if it puts people at risk.
I don't know. I don't know, man. If it put me at risk, I wouldn't care. But I'm not going to put my son at risk.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's the family that they can target.
Yeah. I don't give a shit, right? Honestly, there is nothing I say that I wouldn't stand by and put my face to, because I don't say anything that's that outrageous anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to fuck up my son's career. I'm just not. I'm just not going to do that. It wouldn't be fair. That's my issue with it.
Yeah, I think also the issue that you find with some people is that they do have this kind of this sense of, I'm online, so anything I do, I can push it right to the edge and far, far beyond the edge as what I actually feel. Because I've got this avatar in front of me and it's online, so it doesn't matter anyway. So there are, I think that some of the issue with some of these right-wing groups is the anonymity, because people are pushing it further and further than they actually feel like it. But it's for the entertainment value, not for the philosophy, I suppose.
Yes, but I mean, therein lies the problem, in the sense that if we want to sort of touch on subjects like responsibility, these are bitch tier subjects, right? Responsibility, manliness. How is acting like a juvenile on the internet, dropping the N-word and talking about things that you probably actually don't really even believe? That's just you shirking the real world.
I totally agree with that, but I agree with what you're saying there, Sojo. But like I said, there are real world things that come into this. And
that's for you, yes. And I mean, I'm not going to challenge you on your particular point. You've made it. I accept it. Fair enough. But for the rest of us, I don't really have an excuse.
Sojo, I don't go around using the N-word and doing this stuff, do I?
No, not at all.
So, absolutely, I entirely see what you're saying. Yeah, there's these edgy meme boys who do all this kind of crap. And I think that has actually died down a little bit recently. I mean, like at one stage, say 2019, it was enormous. I think it's died down a little bit since then.
My Twitter feed is full of it.
Well, I'm not on Twitter, so that's another thing. I think we should get off social media, guys. But the thing is, you and I will get tarred with the brush of these people you're talking about, even though we don't actually go on about that stuff.
I don't think I don't think that I would really. I don't think I would. I mean, I really don't have any excuse. And it actually bothers me that I am anonymous.
I think you're in a very strong position because you're basically self-employed, so far as I understand. So, unlike when I was working and I was in sales, I was self-employed. I didn't give a shit, okay? Because basically I was employed by myself. I couldn't get sacked, and the people I was selling to didn't give a shit and probably would have agreed with most of the stuff I would have said, because they were mostly average working class Australian people. So, working or middle class Australian people, I should say. I do agree. But like when it comes to this stuff, because the Overton window is where it is, because my son does look exactly like me, he really does, he's a spit. I just can't put my face online because he might well have his career fucked up because of it.
No, fair enough. I'm just saying that I feel a sense of shame because I like I say, I don't really feel like I've got any excuse to do it. And in many ways, I suppose I kind of just fell into it in the sense that I just had an avatar because I just watched YouTube videos, and then I got invited onto a stream once, and I've kind of stuck with it. But
you had far more than one avatar.
Oh, well,
Sojo's got about 50 avatars, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, I haven't got anything else to say. I'm just saying that I think that it ties in. I think that there's a deeper point there, which is that there's a kind of juvenile nature to it in the sense that it gives you this freedom to say anything without consequence, but that's not how the real world works. And maybe as a sort of coming of age, young men should think about, actually, I'm going to drop this avatar and become who I am in a sort of Spencerian sense.
You must step over.
Become who you are, or however.
Yeah, but you've also got to bear in mind that if someone's going to employ you, you've got to be careful from that point of view. If you're not,
of course, yeah. That's this is what I'm talking about. That you have to be a soldier who can navigate and orienteer the terrain. So you have to learn how to operate within the system, operate within the boundaries of the Overton window. That's a skill that people are not learning.
Yeah, maybe, but the Overton window keeps getting smaller, mate. That's what I say at the moment.
There's also the fact that if people weren't behind the avatars, they wouldn't say as much to get themselves in hot water. They would very quickly learn how to.
I think that's kind of what Sojo is saying, but
that's exactly what I'm saying.
But I don't think that that's necessarily good from our point of view. Like, we're trying to widen the Overton window, not narrow it.
I suppose this is where I may end up disagreeing with you on what you think is controversial and not, but my sense and view is that there's basically, like, the demographic game is baked into the cake, so there's literally no point even talking about this anymore. I don't even think there's any point talking about a sort of quote-unquote political solution. It's just pointless. So therefore, you may as well...
That's an orange.
Oh, okay. Dragon Energy. That's in joke that probably no one gets. But no, I don't think. And also, I don't think. Again, this is sort of going back to the stream that Academic Agent and Charlemagne had yesterday. Yeah. I was actually really, really pleased with the things that I was hearing from them, because I thought, these guys are actually sort of moving towards where I am. Whereas, who cares whether England and Britain is sort of 90% white? Who cares if there's a spiritual wasteland?
I care if it's 90% British, not white.
Oh, whatever. That's sophistry. You know exactly what I mean.
Yes, I disagree. I disagree.
Yeah, okay, you disagree, but to the average man on the street or the press, they know exactly what you mean. And to them, it's all the same.
Hang on.
You're
talking about from the social liberals' point of view, are you?
Yes, but further to the point, I don't think the racial thing is just really that important.
Yeah, I see. I don't totally agree with that.
I think it's important, but you've got to look at it holistically.
Yeah, I'm not a white nationalist, but I am a British nationalist, an Anglo-Celtic nationalist.
It's being pushed to the forefront, and I think that there's a lot of other. It's a symptom, not a cause of the problem.
Yeah, you see what Pep says in the chat here is totally correct, and this is what I'm against. See, I'm not a white nationalist because there's no such thing as white people. There isn't really. But I'm an Anglo-Celtic British nationalist for sure. Like, do I want Britain to be full of Poles or French people? No.
Right, but no one cares. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter. If you,
In what sense, Simon?
well, they'll just say, yeah, but British are white, so you're still a white nationalist.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, absolutely. I do see that. And there's another reason why it's quite difficult to stick your face online, because I think it should be perfectly acceptable to turn around and say that, like, Britain should be full of British people.
Right,
but you can't do that now.
But if you were someone who was doxxed and wanted to do this game anyway, you would simply talk about it in more abstraction.
I'm not sure. I just think you get cancelled.
Well, look, I mean, the thing is that, like,
if you've got enough, like, the reason we get away with this is because my channel is tiny. If my channel was like 50 times as big as it is now, I don't think we would, frankly.
Right, but I mean, the thing is, like, the demographic thing kind of matters, and it doesn't. That, like, demographically, the country kind of does need fixing. But if you could reinvigorate the British people with a real spirit again, it would be the easiest thing in the world to fix. It would barely be considered an obstacle.
Maybe so. Just Randy in the chat. There's no such thing as British people. The English people and Scots are diverging culturally and politically. I don't agree with that at all, mate. I don't think the SNP represent most Scottish people, to be honest. They probably represent more Irish people than they do Scots. And I know Scotsmen who say the same thing. Go on, Sojo. I can hear you disagreeing there.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that comment, but I think really Randy's talking about that in a quite literal political sense, as in a political entity that is Scotland and England.
Yeah, I just don't think he's right.
But he is correct in the sense that the SNP keep winning more seats. There is a divergence.
Yeah, they didn't even win a majority of the last elections.
Again, this is sophistry. The Unionists can't get together a voting bloc. I mean, that's a big problem.
Can't. Yes, I agree.
At the moment, they cannot.
Yeah,
yes,
I agree with that. There needs to be a homegrown Scottish Unionist party, and until that happens, this state is going to continue. But I think once there is a homegrown Scottish Unionist party, the SNP will not do anywhere near as well.
But also the fact that, and I think this has always been historically the case, but there's a Scottish Labour Party, there's a Scottish Conservative Party. But it's not just the Labour Party. It's not just the Conservative Party. There's always this appendage, like African American, like Scottish Labour, Scottish Conservatives. So there is this detachment there. There is definitely a detachment there, and it's a question of whether it's a question of whether that divergence is growing. And I think I do side with Randy in his assessment that it does appear to be shifting that way. The sand appears to be.
I don't think it is myself, but yeah, okay.
But what's your basis for that? I mean, the nationalist movement is growing stronger.
I lived in Scotland for a while. I have a lot of Scottish friends. I talk to a lot of Scottish people. The SNP is more Northern Irish Catholic than it is Scottish, really. And that is a fact. Now, they con a fair number of Scots. They do, but only in certain areas. Like, you used to be able to drive around Glasgow, and in some areas you see provisional IRA propaganda scrawled on railway bridges and stuff. But that was Irish people rather than Scots.
Yeah, but
really?
Whatever. The fact is they live there now. They live there and they're not going anywhere. Therefore, you just have to consider them part of that nation now.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say to you is that is not most of Scotland. And
yeah, blah, blah, blah. Not the true Scots. Okay, I mean, whatever, but still, the voting bloc of people that are there.
What happened at the Scottish independence referendum? Remind me.
Yeah, what is it? It was 52 to 48 or 40.
Who won?
The Unionists
Thank you.
vote barely.
I don't care. But they won, didn't they?
They did win, but Randy's point was that there is a divergence, implying that there is a growing shift between the two entities, that being Scotland and England. I think
but there's a growing shift between London and the rest of England, isn't there?
Yes, most definitely.
Right. So it's kind of meaningless in many respects, in my opinion. Because of the fact that it's certain people in certain places have certain views, but most English people don't live in London. Most Scottish people don't live in Glasgow, surprisingly enough, although nearly half of them do. You've got to look at this thing with a bit more nuance, I think, than people sometimes do. And at the time of the Scottish independence referendum, the SNP were probably more popular than they are now. Arguably.
Based on what? I mean, how are you going to back that up?
Well, because according to polling figures and also recent elections, the SNP are now doing less well than they were.
But they've just picked up more seats in the election, so how does that square?
Well, all that's happening in Scotland is the Labour Party is disappearing up its own backside, just like it is in England. The difference is in England, the Conservatives are picking up those votes, and in Scotland, the SNP are. That's all. It's the Labour Party that's dying.
I can't believe that what I'm hearing is that the SNP are growing, and you're just saying, oh, the SNP aren't growing. It's just Labour are just falling, and their votes are just going into the ether.
No, they're not. They're going to the SNP in Scotland, but they're going to the Conservatives in England. It's the Labour Party that is dying, that is causing these slight changes.
Okay.
I don't understand why you can't see that. I mean, that's really
I see it. Yes, the Labour Party vote is dropping, and it's being picked up by the SNP.
In Scotland and in England, it's being picked up by the Conservatives, who are not Conservative at all, actually.
So there is a divergence then.
Is there a divergence? I don't know how you look at this. Well, Randy's saying the Union is dying with the Labour Party. No, I don't agree with that at all. But anyway, that's just me. The Conservatives under Alexander Johnson are not Conservative. So I'm not sure there is all that much difference in an Englishman voting Conservative and a Scots person voting SNP. What I do think is that there are quite a lot of Scots these days who see that the SNP's idea of going from a very important part of the United Kingdom to an utterly unimportant part of the European superstate is not a particularly good idea. I don't think all of the SNP votes would convert into votes for Scottish independence. And I would also point out that when the Scottish referendum was done, it was a once-in-a-generation thing. We ain't gone through a generation since that. So the one thing I totally agree with Alexander Johnson on is, no, there ain't going to be another Scottish indie ref. And nor should there be. Certainly not for another 5 or even 10 years. Anyone?
I mean, there will be though, won't there? They're just going to keep pushing for it, and
I don't think there will be one. I don't think there will be one out of them for at least 5 years. I really don't. I don't see it.
Well, maybe not for 5 years, no, but there will be one.
And I reckon they'll lose again because a lot of the Scottish voters who vote SNP because of, I don't know, fucked up nationalist reasons won't actually vote to leave the Union. I just don't think they will. I mean, you even look at it from an industry and an economics and jobs point of view. Like most British warships are built in Scotland. There are huge British military bases all over Scotland. And all of that would close down and move if Scotland became independent, and it would have to. Our Scottish, I think the Scots are pretty canny, and I don't think they'll ever really support that because they know damn well that just will not work for Scotland.
There's an easy cure for this. We do have a referendum in England as to whether or not we want to keep Scotland.
Well, yeah, I reckon a load of English people would vote chuck them out now, and yeah. I don't think that's right either.
But I guarantee, if we voted to get rid of them, it would be a case of, well, no, hang on, we want to stay in.
Yeah, see, like I said, I don't think that most Scots, if it came to another referendum, and like I say, I don't think there's any chance of that happening, certainly for the next 5 years. Most Scots won't vote for it. The Scots are not stupid. And what that horrible wee woman in Scotland is offering people is enormous tax hikes, because like England sends a lot of money north of the border to Scotland, and most Scots know that, even if they don't want to admit it. It would be a devastation of things like the Scottish shipbuilding industry, for example, which is still important. And like I said, it would take Scotland from being a very important part of the United Kingdom to being an infinitesimally stupid and unimportant part of the European superstate. And I don't think most Scots want that. I really don't.
God's Own just pointed out something in the chat. He said, scariest thing I've heard pointed out this week was on the New Culture Forum. It was pointed out that most people in the UK vote left, and the Tories only win because the political party left is divided.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm not sure I totally agree with it because
I agree with it, definitely. I mean, for starters, you saw the Green Party vote share increase.
I was just about to say that I looked at my local area, and the Green Party beat Labour. They didn't win any of the seats, but they beat Labour in every single area across the half dozen around here by a considerable margin. So I do wonder if there's going to be a shift towards, well, I mean, let's see what our old friend Blair does, but I think that if he doesn't make any move, Green Party might really start to make a bit of a push forwards.
Yeah. Also, I saw you had some good things to say about conservation and so on actually being a natural conservative issue rather than a left-wing issue, really. And although it took me a while to get it, I finally actually agreed with it on that.
I think we spoke about that a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the use of language. Yeah.
Like I do think that the environment and so on and conserving it is a natural right of centre issue rather than a left wing issue. Particularly trying to do that in harmony with human beings. A lot of the Greenies basically would like to wipe out all the humans and somehow think that would be okay.
Well, but most of the Greens aren't even really Greens. I mean, they it's the same as like Labour. They'll love to bang on about the housing issue, but if you bring up immigration or anything else that plays into the housing issue that isn't a leftist issue, they will actually almost completely drop that argument entirely because they never really cared about it. And you see the same with the environmental stuff.
Yep. Yeah, don't disagree. So, Joe, you were talking about making the environment, etc., a right-wing issue, which it naturally is. Most of the national parks in Africa and so on were started by right-wing people. Right-wing British people in the case of Africa. So, what do you got to say on that one,
man? Well, I think it's a bit of a muddied issue. Because in a funny kind of way, you could say that, yes, the left actually shouldn't be for environmentalism because they essentially have a materialist view of life. And they're all about the alleviation of inequality and that of suffering. So to give everybody flights to Benidorm, to give everybody the Barratt home, to give everybody the 2 cars and the TV. That is the alleviation of suffering and the levelling and the raising up of all individuals, which necessarily entails having more material resources. So you could kind of make the argument that from a sort of philosophical point of view, the left actually should be the mass sort of destroyers of the environment, but you do have to, when you look at what they're trying to do, they're trying to essentially have their cake and eat it, in the sense that it's almost a kind of utilitarian view that they have, in the sense that they want to raise the living condition of everybody and as many people as possible. Just enough. Give them just enough of their insect gruel, give them just the right square footage in their sort of highly stacked and condensed container apartment that we're going to be living in, our pods, giving everybody just enough to live and survive. But at the same time, it's sort of, economical, and it's ecological, and it's very, very low impact on the environment. It kind of goes both ways, but I think that you have to look at the logic of the left and say that actually they have to be ultimately a kind of cancerous growth on the environment, because they just believe that you can just raise up everybody to a sort of a first world material level of living, and that's impossible. That can't be the way. It can only be the right wing that says no, there will be inequality. Some people will have more, some people will have less.
I think that some of the... Oh, sorry, carry on.
I was going to say that argument's not really going to fly with the general public, which is kind of why you have to talk around it and use it as a weapon against migration. Not that the Tories are actually concerned about that, because they pretty much believe in the same things as the left do anyway. Line goes up, GDP goes up, this is all great. So in many ways, they have different reasons for the outcome that we have, but the outcomes converge. The outcomes are exactly the same. They just have a different sort of justification for it.
But also, surely it's a conservative thing and a traditionalist thing and a reactionary thing that, standing in the Dales or in a forest somewhere or in the hills of Scotland or wherever it may be is kind of it's good for the soul. Like Sojo, you're saying that the left is materialist, and it is. The traditionalists and reactionaries like myself, we're not, and I absolutely get a spiritual high from being in a wild place.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, the traditional point of view would be that the all of the sort of natural free land would have been the king's estate, and the reason that the king's estate would have existed would be for the growing of pheasants and of boar and whatever, and that wouldn't be common land. That wouldn't be the Commonwealth of England that the peasants could farm.
But there were loads of commons, of course, in England, and also.
Well, that's not true, because I mean, part of like the English Civil War, like with the Levellers, is that they had big problems with the fact that all the king's estate, they couldn't use it to graze and to collect firewood for themselves.
But until all the Enclosure Acts of the 18th century, there were actually lots of commons, and
but not enough.
Oh no, obviously not enough. I mean, Britain's a relatively small island,
Yeah, very small, yeah.
Well, it's not very small. It's about the 9th biggest island in the world, but
it's a small landmass for the amount of people that live here.
Oh yeah,
way too small. Not self-sufficient in any respect whatsoever.
Totally agree with that. But if you are looking at British and English traditions, like going back to the medieval period, for example. There were lots of commons, and those commons were very, very important because people could graze their livestock on them. They could also hunt the rabbits and what have you that was on them. and they were very important for British people. And the Enclosure Acts of the 18th century, which by no means all Conservatives or Tories in those days supported, not all of them did, were a bad deal. You know, this goes back to your freeborn Englishman stuff, you know, and the English Longbowmen, Agincourt and Cressy and so on. The Commons and English rights and all the rest of it, which are so confused these days with this neoliberal bollocks that everyone talks about.
Yeah, I just want to, just on conservatism, make a point where sometimes we can see it as being a contradiction, but I do think it's important to remember that although they're few and far between, there are different strands of thought on the left. And I think that we see this green movement coming from like a neo Malthusian sort of progressive movement where nothing can be natural. It's a very blank slate idea because nothing can be natural.
Yeah. They're watermelons, green on the outside and communist red on the inside.
Exactly, and because there is no natural state of affairs, everything must be formalized and must be top down managed. Yeah. So I think that's where we see this sort of movement, because this is why I bring up Malthus, where population growth must be controlled from the top because they don't see there being a natural solution. It must be this elite at the top micromanaging population control. We see it exactly the same with use of fossil fuels or whatever it may be. This kind of this autistic desire to be carbon neutral, regardless of whether or not it's useful.
The Albion. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but look, I go back to the ordinary British country family in the 19th century who would have a cottage garden, for example, which was basically a load of stuff growing more or less wild, but including herbs and some vegetables and all this kind of stuff. And it was actually good for the insects and the wildlife too, just because it made sense. And that was natural, and it was bottom up rather than top down.
Yes, but their argument would be there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. It might be the state of affairs now, but without it being micromanaged from the top, that may not always be the case. So the population might go out of control. To me, because of the natural state of affairs, these things will have solutions which seem to manifest themselves when the issue arises, like with population growth. But for these people, it has to be managed from the top because there is no natural solution for these issues.
But also, we hang on a minute, Sergio. We've also got to point out that all of the population growth in Britain over the last certainly 25 years, and probably more than that, it has come from immigration, because our birth rates are below replacement. Sorry, Sergio, carry on.
Yeah. That's a whole other separate issue. But yeah, of course, yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that. I actually think that there is. I have a degree of sympathy with the sort of Malthusian view and the seeming need to sort of control things from the top. And the reason why I say this is sort of rooted in historical fact. So, and the funny thing is that the situation changes. So historically, the UK has been a very large exporter of people. The UK and Ireland have exported essentially probably 100 million people abroad.
Yeah, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States. Yeah.
So the question is, if there was a period when there was huge population growth in this country, and the natural sort of safety valve for that population growth was to go to the USA, to Canada, to New Zealand, Australia, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine what would have happened if there were no colonies, there was no New World, what the population of the UK would have been? There would have been famines. The population now would probably be 120 million people indigenous, just like Japan. So there are times in history where it's like, oh shit, actually, that we have the surplus population, we don't know what to do with it. and they get to a situation like today where it's like, oh, actually, we can support this number of people, but it just depends on the sort of the technology of the time and the agricultural industrial processes that are available.
Well, if the argument
so actually,
is, I don't think the population.
I just want to say quickly that
carry on. Yeah, carry on.
I'll finish up real quickly, but so I can understand why, if you're sort of a student of history, you can look at resource management and think, actually, this does need to be managed from the top down. And in some circumstances, actually, yes, there does need to be population control. If there hadn't been the New World, I would have been a politician in the 1700s and the 1800s thinking, fuck me, we need to do something to stop people from having 8, 9, 10 children, because the UK is well beyond its carrying capacity for the given technology of the time. So I can understand why there is there's certain segments of people who think that there is a need to control the population and to control resources, because there's a historical precedent for it.
Well, my argument would be that you're saying that you would have been in favour of resource management if we didn't have colonies for them to go to. But I would say these children wouldn't have been born if there weren't a surplus of people leaving the country already.
It's not children. I'm sorry. It's immigration in the UK's case now. It's not children.
Well, no, I'm talking about if we're going back to when Malthus was writing.
Historically, okay.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I'm obviously in favour of hierarchy, and I'm not saying that there might not be situations in which resource management would need to be managed top down, but I'm saying that the mindset that we see from something like the Green Party or that sort of mind view is that everything must be managed from the top down, regardless of situation, because it's a blank slate belief that there is no innate characteristic within man that will have, natural mechanisms to prevent this from happening. So the enlightened ones among us must prevent people from doing that. It's kind of a warped view of what in some ways I sympathise with it, but it's sort of a warped view of what I think the right is. It's sort of a corrupted elite as opposed to a sort of more, traditional perennial elite.
We've been there's people in the chat have been talking about how many people were pushed off their land during the enclosures, etc., and that is true. And that also was one of the things behind the large-scale immigration from Britain to places like Canada, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, etc. But the average 18th century and even 19th century Britain, be he Englishman, Scotsman, Welshman or Irishman, had virtually nothing to do with the government compared to what happens today. Like, the government really didn't have much to do with people in those days compared to what it does today, which I think we often forget.
Yeah, well, from cradle to grave now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let alone, I'm not even talking about being locked in your house for months and months at a time because of a disease which is not at all dangerous unless you're over 80 or already sick. But, So, Joe, you were going to say something. Carry on, mate.
I was going to say something. I can't remember what the hell it was now.
I'm sure it will come back to you. Ataman, you got anything on this one?
No, I kind of have some misgivings with some agreements with the Malthusians. I do think that population growth is way more complicated than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, one of the things I remember. Go on, Sergio, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, it ties in with yes. So you're absolutely right. But here's the thing: the future is unknown. So in many ways, we actually don't know how things would unfold. But I suppose the right wing, naturalist, natural law, pagan way of looking at this would be, well, you let the chips fall where they may, and the obvious solution to overpopulation is starvation, and the weak will perish. Now, I'm afraid that there's a lot of people in our group that aren't going to be happy with that. Happy with that sort of strong meat diet of just letting the chips fall where they may.
Well, I'd stop the foreign aid to Africa for sure.
Sorry, I'm talking about in what would have happened historically. You know, in the 1800s, if there was no.
Yeah, but all right. Here's an interesting.
I mean, the thing is, the problem doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist in our current time.
No, not in the West.
We are now looking at this through a prism of sort of first world problems, thinking, well, how do we sort of construct the utopian New Jerusalem that we want, which is green, pleasant lands, and there's no Barratt homes, and everything is natural, authentic, and organic. That's what we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. That's our view of sort of conservation of England, whereas the leftist view is, well, how can we cram as many sort of poor and oppressed people into the country? While at the same time not emitting too much CO2. That's basically what their view is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You're right about that entirely.
But like this is another thing. Like someone in chat said, contraceptions and abortion has managed it. That's not really true, though, is it? I mean,
because of mass immigration.
Well, now hang on a minute. Even if you discount immigration, if you look at like Ireland, that didn't have mass use of contraceptives and abortion until fairly recently.
Very recently. Yeah, very.
The population in Ireland has essentially the same problem that Britain has, which is that there's this massive baby boomer generation that's dying now, and there's very little after that. And even if you look at this on an individual basis, a woman that has, let's say, promiscuous sex and doesn't use does use contraceptives, if she didn't, she would have had that first child. Will probably be a single mum now, and that's a whole different problem. But it wouldn't really be growing the population in quite the same way. I mean, and people shitlibs used to go on about how if you just sent all these contraceptives to Africa, that would fix their population problem. But actually, what Africa needs is a based empire to come in, take it over, build it up, make the economic prospects of the natives better,
and then stay there.
And then their population growth kind of starts to level off slightly, but there are lots of other problems.
This is in some ways my point, that you don't. A lot of the time, you don't need to have a top-down view. If you cut the welfare state, cut contraception, if a woman has a child, she can feed it or she can't, and that's kind of up to her.
The Albion. I think this is coming on to another subject, which is also something we've got to talk about. Western society is pretty sick. Okay, I think all of us probably would agree on that. And one of the symptoms of that sickness is the fact that families are breaking down. We were talking earlier about young men need advice from older blokes because they don't have a dad. And why don't they have a dad? Because no-fault divorce is a thing. And if a woman decides that she doesn't want to be with you, she can just press the eject button for no reason whatever, and you will lose your children 99.9% of the time, or 99.5% of the time, probably more accurately. And you'll also lose half of the wealth that you have managed to build up over the time that you've been married. Why? Obviously this also comes into contraception and abortion on demand, which are other aspects of the same kind of issue. But unless we can do something about keeping families together, then I don't know how we solve a lot of this stuff. And we rightly, I think, try to tell young men, find yourself a good woman. Who are not that easy to find these days. I have people slagging me off saying, "Oh, you're in your 50s. There were great women around all those years ago, but they're crap now." Well, let me tell you, guys, there was a lot of shit women around even like 30 years ago. Probably there are more now. I don't know. My interest in women these days is moderately limited, let me say. I ain't going to fuck my life up over one now because I'm not after having kids anymore because I've done that. But I think this is another issue we got to talk about. And given you three guys are a bit younger than me, I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about that stuff.
I I don't think the women are that bad as long as you control for your environment. I mean, like let's say like dating websites are a rather toxic way to meet someone, but if you get off of them, you can do all right. It's not that bad.
I think I hold the completely opposite view. I think that UK women have fallen down a pit of depravity, the likes of which is unimaginable. There's a lot. There are some that are fine, yeah, sure, not all and all that, but yeah, it's bad. It's bad. If you find a good one, keep hold of them.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've just always had a decent bit of luck, but then I'm currently unmarried, so obviously not that much luck.
But you're also plainly a nice bloke who I think would appeal to most women, Alan, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like the other thing as well is a lot of them are just kind of red pillable in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. But then women are always like influenceable. That's what they do. They follow. They tend to be followers rather than leaders.
I suppose that's probably one of the biggest barriers is that there are a lot who, due to various movements and various ideas, have been imbued with this idea that they are a leader when they're probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree entirely with what Pep just said in the chat. Sojo, what do you think about this one, mate?
I suppose I'm going to have to be the odd one out, because I think in many ways I'm actually not really that much of a traditionalist. I you know what, I actually just don't care. I actually enjoy the struggle and the challenge and the glory to be had in this shitty situation. That's just me. I think we're living in great times where you can carve out your own bit of glory, given the shit state of everything.
That's a manly attitude. I'll give you that.
That is genuinely the way I look at the state of things. It's like this is our moment for glory in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways.
See, what I think's happening now, and I hasten to add, I don't know, because this is like I'm too old for this shit. I don't do it anymore. But I'm trying to think. When was the last time I went out with a chick? Probably. But
why don't you just go for younger women? Like you've got kids.
No, I always went for younger women.
I mean substantially younger.
No, I always went for women in their 30s, and I still, if I go out with a woman, she's probably going to be about 38. All right.
No, I mean sub 30, mate. I mean.
No, I don't do that.
Why not?
Why not? Why not?
Because I don't like women in their 20s. I didn't like women in their 20s when I was like 20 myself.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
I always preferred women of about 30 when I was like 20.
Duke likes a roasty.
Right, but
I'm sorry, I'm only kidding.
No, I beg your pardon. Let me make this clear. When I was like 20, I liked women who were like 28, 30. And I still like women who are about 28, 30. That's to me, that's the best age for women, you know. But like I said, I haven't been out with a woman for probably 2 years now, and not because I can't, because I don't care. Like the last chick I went out with, I fucked off basically because she was boring shit out of me. And one day I was sitting with her and I thought, what the fuck am I doing? You know. But that's me, and I'm an older guy, and I do not I think some of the really intelligent MGTOW guys are not wrong. People like Stardust, Stroke, Thinking Ape, and the Aussie dude Coltane.
Yeah, well,
I don't totally agree with him, but I think he's a very intelligent bloke, and I think some of those guys say some very intelligent stuff. But I don't think it's good advice for young men in the nationalist sphere because we actually need to have babies.
Well, I actually don't agree with this. I don't like this sort of mechanistic. We must do this. We must like ant people. You know, we must have more children. No, I think that everybody is on their own journey, and again, I'm a man of quality, not quantity. So
yeah,
if you want to have children, that's great. I would like to have children, but I'm not obsessed with the idea of having like I must have 2 or 3 or 5 children to propagate.
Nor should you be. Nor should you be. But
but you're kind of implying that, though, aren't you?
I definitely think that someone like yourself, who is a higher ranking, what's the word I'm trying to use? You're a fairly high quality bloke, I would say, in most respects, from what I know of you. And someone like yourself should certainly have 1 or 2 kids. But I'm not one of these people who think you should become a baby breeding farm, you know. Not at all.
This is the Brutus manifesto, which is let's raise an army of medieval children where we can, reconquer Africa. I'm not down for this. It's not the Laura Taylor spread your legs and pump out 5 kids, inshallah, and that kind of thing. I don't think.
No, I think there's a middle. I think there's a middle ground, Sojo, between those 2 positions. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people may not have any children, and actually I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people are built for other things in this world, that they spread their genes mimetically by some other great means. Like essentially, like take Isaac Newton, right? Brilliant man, changed the world in unfathomable ways.
Never reproduced.
Never reproduced, probably never had sex because he was an autist, right?
Didn't.
But right. But he touch the world in ways that nobody on this panel ever will because of his sheer genius. So you can contribute to the body of humanity in a way that is not tied to genetically reproducing.
Yeah, all right.
But he
I don't disagree.
He was horrifically autistic to the point where he cut off his friendship with John Locke because John Locke kept trying to pair him up with women.
Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe he was a queer. Maybe he might have been gay. How else would you deal with it in that time and era?
Guys, hang on. We're going a bit off the subject here. I'm just going to bring up what Pep said in the chat that I put on the screen here, and this is what I was just about to address. This is what I was just about to address. I think what's happening these days is that a very small proportion of blokes are having loads of sex with loads of women. They're not producing kids, of course, because of contraception and abortion on demand and not getting married. I think loads of blokes are doing that, and I think there are a lot of blokes who are finding it very difficult just to get one girlfriend. And I think that's more the kind of thing that we should try and address insofar as we can.
It's funny because in some ways it's a return to sort of real tradition, where it is this sort of prime crust of men getting all the women, but obviously previously they would have reproduced, but it's just for sex, and then when the girls are used up and in their mid-20s, that's when they settle down with someone that's subpar.
Yeah, they've done the cock carousel, as it's called.
Yeah, but this is what I mean when I talk about them. Like the amount of women that you'd actually look at and think, oh yeah, I would want you to have my child is so low nowadays because they're all bicycles.
I totally agree with that. I'm an old bastard, so I'm going to ask Sojo and Atman what they think about that, who are a bit younger.
Sorry, can I just... I need to know what you mean by bicycle. I've not heard that.
The town bike. You've not heard the town bike.
They're easy to ride. Right, okay. It's so obvious now. Right, okay, sorry. I literally did not get it at all. I got it now. Right.
Okay, I'll believe you.
I thought it was a reference to being sort of, fat or something. I don't know.
Oh, for God's sake, no. It's a slut, mate. It's a slut,
Right, okay. So what about so this will be controversial, but I mean, what do you think of the idea of like guys who can't get laid or can't get a girlfriend and they go to Southeast Asia? I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, my view is, well, best of luck to you if that's what you've got to do to fulfill.
I don't get guys. I don't get guys who can't get laid. I just don't get it. It's not that hard.
I get it. I understand. No, I take somebody like the epitome of this, Chad Gold, and people say, "Well, I don't understand why Chad Gold can't get laid. He's not a bad looking fellow." And it's like, yeah, that's correct. He's not a bad looking fellow, but you can just tell by talking to the guy that it's virtually going to be impossible for him to have a sort of regular, normal conversation and flirt with a woman. Like the idea of flirting with a woman to this guy is like, what? Why would I do that? That doesn't make sense.
You've got to have confidence to deal with women. I mean,
but the thing is, Duke, is that, and this, some people don't have that, and it's like they will never have that. They just don't have those soft skills.
See, this is why, like, the Western system of like one man, one wife came about, because it allowed these guys who were not particularly skilled in that regard to get a woman and keep one. And the breaking down of that is a big part of the destruction of Western civilization.
But would you want an arranged marriage? I mean, I can see the benefits of it, but
I don't think they were arranged, Sojo, so much as it was just that, like, a woman had very little choice but to find herself a bloke, and a bloke had to find himself a woman, because that was what happened. Like, I'm talking about, let's say in the 1870s or the 1880s, that was the normal way things were.
Well, what about have you ever heard of the surplus woman question?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know why I brought.
Yes, I've heard of it, but what about?
That was actually a good situation for men, because there were far more men in the UK than there were. There are far more women in the UK at that time than there were men, and so of course men had
First World War ended that situation.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
That was the natural corrective to that, was that there'd be a war, and normally not such a bad one as the First World War, of course. but
So I'm looking at the comment from Frederick Tarr, who says that Happers should go and settle in Siberia and build a new Spenglerian high culture around anime.
Right.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, a new glorious civilization.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just get fed up with all these cunts suggesting them being in the most cold place you can find. I don't like the cold, but there we go. That's just me. I like my place in the sun. Adam, what do you think about that stuff, mate? You're a younger fella, but a bit older than some of these like teenagers who watch us.
Well, I mean, it was only like 12 years ago for me, and I know a lot's changed since then. But I wasn't particularly very confident at all. And I used to have random spurgouts ranting about whatever weird thing interested me, and I still had. I had very little trouble with women, as long as I tried to control the environment in which I met them and talked to them. And
absolutely right. Yeah.
And the thing is, as well, I mean, I used to get a lot of comments about how I was clearly dating up with some of the girls I was meeting. Not all of them. Some of them were, a bit like train wrecks. But so I don't really. I am a bit disconnected from what the problem is for young men now.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. Like, I always pretty much dated up, in the sense of, like, I come from a naturally working class family, but I tended to date middle class chicks. But many of them were train wrecks, because there's plenty of train wrecks in the middle classes, trust me, especially amongst women. And so, yeah, I don't know, guys. This is, like I said, this is a subject which is related to what we were talking about earlier with careers. And in some ways, it's possibly even more basic, because, like, as a young man, to be happy, you probably need a woman and then a family, I think.
But it also relates to the conversation earlier we had about gender equality. That, like, for example, like you were saying about, like, Sojo, and you were saying about dating younger women, right? The feminists were right in that there is male privilege. One of the privileges is you can date younger women.
If you're rich or successful enough or handsome enough, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but as well, like, if you sort yourself out, you don't even have to be naturally that good looking. You can work on yourself in other ways.
Oh yeah,
you can really use sort of modernity in a way that suits your preferences and your tastes.
I agree with that. Yeah, there are.
Yeah, I agree.
there is a toolkit of substances that you can use to give yourself a body that the ancient Greeks would die for, and you can get that over. Well, you can pretty much get that over the counter now. I mean, you have to get a prescription, but you know, TRT, you know, and that's a legitimate problem among males in the Western world these days, declining testosterone. So
there's no set base level either. So you can basically, as long as you've got an understanding enough doctor, you can get it quite easily.
Well, I go to a doctor once a year to get my bloods done. And I'm actually not on TRT, but my brother is, and we use the same doctor to do the diagnosis.
So Joe, what's TRT, please?
It's testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I lost my hair when I was in my 20s, so I didn't need that. But okay, carry on.
No, it's not. It's a bit more than just hair loss. It's
hair loss is caused by too much testosterone. I think
it's actually caused by too much DHT, which is a potential result of having too much testosterone that is not freely available. I mean, there's no need to get into the specifics, but whatever.
Yeah, okay. And like I've said before to guys, if you are losing your hair, don't worry about it. Just shave it off, mate. No girl's going to care. As long as your head's not a ridiculous shape, they will not care. In fact, they may like it.
Well, my head is a bit of a ridiculous shape, so, and although I've got a slightly receding hairline, I don't think I'm going to be losing too much of it anytime soon.
No, well, that's fine, mate. If you're not losing it, there's but like my dad lost his hair early and worried about it all his life, which was ridiculous. You know, it was the one silly thing about him. But yeah, most women don't give a shit if you shave your head, mate. You know, and if you're losing your hair, that is the way to go. Don't do a comb over.
Well, I think it's all about context. I mean, you know, I think realistically, it is better to have a full head of hair than to not, because it gives you more options to what you can do with your look, if you want to phrase it that way. But I'm saying that
it depends.
It's fair enough. You can shave everything off, but you know, if you're fat, you're still fat. If you're ugly, you're still ugly. So I can't. I mean, I've been criticised before for saying. I mean, people have said, "Oh, you don't give a shit about," or you've disprivileged, physicality and working out and this kind of thing. And it's like, no, I don't. My point was that there's too much focus on the physical and less on the spiritual and the intellectual. I'm saying that you can be a cultured. I'm saying you can do both. You can be the cultured thug, as Byron would say. I think it's Byron.
Absolutely 100% agree with you on that one.
Shave your hair off, but also get into the gym and eat well. And I genuinely mean eat well. Eat steak. Get a sous vide machine. Treat yourself as men. Treat yourself to good food. Don't eat junk. Really treat yourself. Have a fillet steak. Have a
absolutely right. Yeah, totally agree.
Have that red meat.
And just on that point, the physical is often a consequence of where you are in the spiritual. So I think there's a certain amount of ugliness that comes through having an ugly spiritual identity, I suppose. Beauty can manifest itself through.
Let me just say to death by cognitive dissonance, no, I fucking wasn't ever. But anyway, no, I like I said, I started losing my hair in my mid-20s and I just shaved it off. I thought, fuck it. But also, I totally agree with what Sojo was saying. You've got to take care of yourself physically. You've got to dress well. And all right, there's going to be limitations on dressing well depending on how much money you've got. But even then, you can get. Yeah, no, but even I was just going to say, even then, you can get around that. You can get around that. Buy stuff that fits you properly. Dress smartly. Polish your damn shoes, and even basic fucking bitch shit like stand up straight and hold your shoulders back. All of this is important, and it also comes back to the stuff we were talking about when we were talking about taking up boxing and stuff like this. Have some confidence.
Well, I'm not sure. it's interesting actually thinking about boxing in this context, but I'm not actually sure that getting involved in a sport where you can get your face battered and and sustain bad injuries is actually a particularly good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, the most boxers don't get their face bad. That's
I suppose you actually wear face gear, don't you, and gloves when you
when
sparring with
when
friends.
you're training, when you're training,
Yeah.
you wear headgear and what
Okay,
have you.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
And honestly, I've never met a chick who gave a shit about a broken nose, to be honest. But there we go. Not that I have one. My dad did, but I don't have one. But I've never met a chick who really cared about that much either. Particularly if she thought that, you're going to be able to protect her, because women actually like men who can protect them. Strange to say.
Okay. Actually, I have got something to say on exercise. So I used to do free weight lifting, sort of typical bodybuilding exercises: bench press, squat, deadlift. But I had an accident in the gym. I had a deadlifting accident, so I've got a like a bulging disc in the back of my in my back, and it was quite bad. So I don't do deadlifting anymore. But of course, since I moved abroad and whatnot, and I got rid of my free weights and that kind of thing. And recently, I purchased a whole set of resistance bands. And effectively, what you can do with these resistance bands is replicate most free weight exercises with equipment that essentially goes into a bag.
Cool.
So you can, and I would imagine they're a lot safer than free weights. So you can do like a deadlift with some sort of very sort of heavy resistance bands.
Cool.
And there's no danger of throwing 100 kilos around or whatever.
Yeah, the only problem with resistance bands is that if you're not doing it properly, you're not actually doing anything. If you're using it correctly, then you can get probably the same workout as like a mid weight weight. But if you just sat there giving it a tug and it's not actually, the whole point is that you need to have some kind of resistance. But
you need constant tension. Yeah, you can't have slack in the.
Yeah,
but
you know that people can use it and feel like that. Oh, look, I'm using it perfectly fine, but they're just sat there tugging on a bloody, no resistance on it at all.
I think, gents, what we're really saying is however you do it, get yourself in shape, because that's obviously a good thing.
Well, no, the point I was making was that you can do all of these wonderful exercises, and they are great, and you can do them at home, and you can take them anywhere with you, and you don't have any excuses. You don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to sort of feel intimidated because there's some gym bro next to you or whatever. You can do all of this as long as you've got an anchor point, sort of mid-level, head height, floor height. You can pretty much do any exercise you want to do. So and for basically €100. If you want to buy all of the sort of
you should put it in pounds though, mate, because we're not fucking Europeans. I know you are, but
I don't know what the fucking sterling
amount would be. Bands develop quite a lot of sticking points though, which is something to be a bit careful
of. Like what?
Well, like if you're doing a banded lift, you're getting all the resistance on sort of one end, and you're getting a lot less on the other. I mean, they actually do. I don't know if you've heard of West Side barbell style training. I forget what the actual technical name for it was, but they used to take a lift like a deadlift with an empty bar or with some weight on the bar, and they would add bands to it. And the idea is that it applies more tension at the top, and it gets you through sticking points. But if you're only using bands, you're kind of developing a sticking point that is the opposite to what most lifters generally get.
Well, I thought the logic behind it was that essentially with the band, you get the least amount of resistance at the range of motion where you're weakest. So at the bottom of a lift where you're weakest, the resistance is less, whereas at the peak contraction or the peak extension, that's where you're generating the most force, and that's where you're getting the most amount of resistance. I mean, that's what I've read. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert on this, but that's what my understanding of it.
But the thing is that those different parts, let's say you've got some sort of bench, right, and you do like a banded bench press. The top end of the lift is basically all arms.
Yeah.
And that's the bit
that's
where
true.
you're getting the most work. And maybe that doesn't bother some people because big arms is cool. But
I suppose the way to get around that would be to do isolation exercises that specifically use the bands to hit the chest, so the upper chest, lower chest, like resistance, like crossover pulls or whatever.
yeah.
I suppose that's the way you get around that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a home gym, and I still use bands just because they are pretty cool in their own way. And like when I do, let's say, I sometimes will just throw my band over the top of a door and just do like some tricep extensions or something.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I suggest kettlebells for the complete opposite end of the spectrum from bands.
I would just say don't neglect your cardio when you're doing all this like weight stuff. The weight stuff is important, but you also need cardio. You need to run or jog or whatever the hell else you do, as well as this like pure strength stuff.
Can I just whilst we're talking about this kind of synthesis of the spiritual and the physical, anyone that I think anyone that hasn't read it should read Letters. What is it? Letters to a Stoic or Letters from a Stoic from Seneca. Any kind of Stoic philosophy, I think, really, really encapsulates this very well. It's very practical, while still mentioning the kind of spiritual aspects.
Duerte's fan in the chat. Yeah, I mean, like boxing, boxers do lots of skipping, lots. It's a good thing. But yeah, I just think you, as a man, you've got to do this synthesis of physical and mental stuff. I mean, and again, this is basic bitch stuff, but like we were saying earlier, there are a lot of boys these days and young men who don't have dads to tell them this basic bitch stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of thought it was kind of cool, but I'm probably going to out myself as being a bit of an idiot. But I couldn't jump rope, so instead I just used to imagine the rope and just put my headphones on with a bit of music and just skip away to my imaginary skipping rope.
Fair enough. I mean, like my old man, when he was in the army, like he was in the boxing team, and one of the things that the army was good at back in those days was that, like, if you were in the boxing team, that's mostly what you did. You got away with lots of other stuff they didn't make you do because you were in the boxing team for the regiment, you know. And like he would run around the perimeter of the camp holding 2 bricks above his head and shit like that, you know. That's going to get you fit, you know. It just is. So I like bringing this back to what we're talking about to the young fellas who are listening and watching this or might watch it in the future. To be a man is, yes, you physically want to be the best bloke you can be, absolutely, you do. And as Sojo and the other guests on here were saying, you also want to be mentally the best man you can be. So you need to read good books, and you need to watch good content, if you like. You know, I don't know what other advice we can give to young chaps. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Watch Splendid Isolation.
Oh yeah, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Watch Splendid Isolation.
I'm actually don't
forget to like and subscribe, guys. It's very important. Sorry, Sojo, carry on.
Sorry, I just want to say that I'm actually very, very against sort of mass consumption of content from YouTube channels. I think that you should sit down with a book and read the books, and then not bother with the whole rigmarole of the content that comes out, unless they're actually scripted videos, because I think that actually there is more. I think there is more value in a scripted video than a stream. There's a kind of degraded and devalued essence.
I think that's a snob view.
It is a snob view.
I agree with him. I do think that the right, because like the skeptic community, as they used to call it, right? You know, like Sargon and all that lot. They fell into this hole of response videos, right? It was all they did. There was nothing original to it. Yeah, and I think the right now has kind of gotten into this hole where it's just all streams. And I'm aware of the irony that I don't make any YouTube videos, and all I've done is go on streams.
I'll be honest with you, right? I think that we cover more stuff in a stream than I could realistically do in a scripted video.
Right, but you also can't really reference a stream in the same way that you can go back and reference a video.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Look, I mean, I'm a distributist fan. I've followed the distributors for years, even though I'm certainly not a Roman Catholic. And he always says, you know, scripted videos are the higher form. And excuse me.
I think that I think streams of this kind are good at getting introductions to things that maybe you wouldn't look at necessarily if you were going for scripted videos, but for the actual informative content, yeah, maybe scripted videos are. Although Bowden never scripted from memory, did he?
Well, this is where that is true, but this is where I was literally just once you'd finished, was going to pick up on that. There's another element to videos, which is that it's not just like informative, but it's a piece of art in and of itself. It's a performance.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were going to say. Yeah,
it's something that is bigger than the sum of its parts, and it's something that is a part of you and a piece in a production that could potentially stand in, you know, posterity forever.
I think that's an exaggeration. And may I say
that, but no, I don't think that is an exaggeration, because that is essentially what every single Bowden video is. That it is a piece of art, it's a performance, it is captivating. There's always
but Bowden was essentially streaming.
No, you
and being videoed while he did it.
Yes, but we will never know. We will never. He says in interviews, "Oh, I just get up there and say what I say," but you never know. I think he's a bit of a cheeky.
Well, you know, he had no script, because you can see he had no script.
But we don't know whether he thought deeply about these things in his own spare time and had a script in his mind, like an actor.
Yeah, I'm sure he
did. And then
performed
the piece on stage for everybody. We will never know. I would like to think, I like to think that he was just an autistic genius and he could say that stuff without even thinking about it. That's the sort of romantic dream.
No, I believe that. I think that's exactly what he was.
But what I'm saying is that there's just something about something that's not live, and it's a piece, and it's almost like a piece of art in its own right that is of a higher value. It's just a higher art form, in my view, or can be, and it should be viewed and approached as art.
If you're making an actual documentary, yeah, I'll agree. If you're making an actual documentary, yes, okay.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I mean, I've watched scripted videos from like within the very narrow sort of right-wing community here on YouTube, and there have been videos which I've actually gone back and watched again, even though I kind of know the information. I don't know, there's just something aesthetically pleasing about the way it's been put across or the way it's been constructed, where I've just kind of felt compelled to watch again, and then got more out of it anyway, because there's often layers to what they're putting across. I watched a stream yesterday by Jord, who's one of the guys that runs that channel, the Meth Squad, and he very briefly in that stream touched on either an essay or a book, and I thought, oh shit, I can't. I was walking at the time. I thought I'll have to go back later and try and find out what that was, because I listen to a lot of that sort of stuff while I'm out on walks, and I couldn't find it again. In the same way that if he'd maybe made a video in which he referenced it would have been easier for me to get it, and easier for me to rewatch and all sorts.
I don't know. Look, I think there are lots of crap streams, and I tend not to watch them. And I think there are lots of crap videos, and I tend not to watch them. There are good videos for sure, and I think if you're going to make a documentary and you're going to actually put in like visuals to go with it, etc., yeah, Sure, I'm not going to disagree with what Ataman and Sojo were saying. But on the other hand, I think there is a certain amount of snobbishness about streams these days that I don't know really where it comes from, to be honest. I mean, and like I said, yeah, there are shit streams. And I think I've done, with you guys, amongst others, shit streams. Yeah? Like our stream last week, I didn't think was very good. There were too many people on it, and we didn't get into 2 or 3 issues, which is the best you can do on a single stream. Yeah. I think this stream, we have actually done that. We've had kind of an overriding theme, which is a bit like advice to young blokes. And I think because there's only 4 of us, we've actually been able to take a bite out of that, if that makes any sense to you guys.
I'm with the snobbishness. I do think that these streams are sort of spitballing ideas, which I think has value in and of itself. But I do think that, yeah, from a kind of spiritual side, it's more of an artistic piece. These kind of pre-recorded, structured, layered, edited videos. I can see that being more of an artistic expression, whereas this is sort of throwing ideas into the ether and seeing what comes out. Which I think both. Yeah. But both of them, I think, have their place, but they just have different. Yeah. They have different value.
Yeah, so the thing is
that my idea for these streams is it's a few mates talking in the pub, but a bit more structured. That's really all they are.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, there is a place for streams. But the thing is like Brutus used to say to me all the time. He used to go, "Oh, just turn on the mic and just talk about something." And I was like, and I used to think no, because the thing is that I can't draw, right? I mean, there are some artistic pursuits I follow, but I actually quite like video editing. And I quite like spending the time trawling through, looking for the right sort of footage and thinking about how it's all going to be structured together and making something that I mean, I kind of wish I could speak better. So, that's always been a bit of a downfall. But
you speak perfectly well, Adam.
I don't know. I'm a bit sort of monotone and a bit. But
no, you're exaggerating. You're
yeah, of course I'm exaggerating.
You're quite good.
Still. But yeah, there's something that I like about constructing this video that people can, almost experience. And I try to think about how I'm putting everything together and spend a lot of time trying to craft it. And I don't know.
Well, there you go. There you go. Then between like Sojo, who's a techie guy, and you who are a video editor, we ought to be able to put something together in terms of videos then, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, I was making a video a while ago that I never finished because I really didn't like where the sort of script and all that went. But I essentially had like American sort of military history portraying sort of like the different eras, and I was going to be talking about how America always kind of got caught in this paradigm of being the sledgehammer to Russia's slightly more soft power approach to things. But yeah, never finished it. Didn't turn out very well.
Interesting. Sojo, what do you think on that stuff, mate?
Yeah, I think we should create more high art for our movement.
So do I, but I don't know if I can possibly create any high art. Like I write quite well.
Well, how do you know that? I mean, you don't know. You would have to give it a try.
I write quite well, but like making videos is hard work, mate.
Yes, but I think you see, I think you have to draw a distinction between video, as in the actual video content of the piece, which. YouTube is technically a video platform, but for most intents and purposes, people are just uploading a monologue with a bit of, a token bit of graphics. Yep. So I'm not saying that it has to be, obviously to have video in there makes it a fully complete artistic piece because it encompasses everything. And if you're in it, then it's even a more realistic and lifelike piece of art. But it doesn't have to be. It could just be like sort of Bowden, that it's a performance. He was a performer. It was interesting and engaging. And that's the thing, I just find so much of the content is, although technically it may be very good, it's not delivered in a way that's sort of inspiring or interesting or it doesn't really encompass the sort of the old classical techniques and traditions that the ancient Greeks would have employed. You know, they even had like rhetoric, you know, sophistry, making an argument, you know, debating, you know, trying to sway an audience. These are sort of old classical techniques that have sort of just been lost, and it's like, well, let's just churn out another video because I need to see the views and the clicks and whatever, rather than it being a piece of art. That's my view. If I'd rather produce one good video a year that I thought was good than produce like a whole litany of just junk because you're on this sort of like YouTube treadmill. But of course, I'm saying that's somebody who doesn't make any videos.
I was just going to say, I will look forward to your 2021 video. Can I just say, Pep in the chat, reading is a female trait. That is absolute crap. All right?
Who said that?
That is, Pep in the chat said it. It is bollocks. Most books are written by men, and most men read books. And if you don't read books, you are never going to learn anything.
Cool. I've got a challenger for winding you up. That's outdone me.
Yeah, fucking absolute shit, mate. Honestly, I've never heard such crap.
The argument I have heard is that reading novels or reading reading fiction is female, but
not really. I mean, not
even then, I disagree. But at least I understand. Like the novel as a concept is more female.
Yeah, but it depends who you read. I mean, if you're going to read, say, Patrick O'Brien, who wrote the brilliant Aubrey Maturin books about the Royal Navy in the 18th century, then trust me, that ain't Ponzi, Pep. Don't be a twat, mate. Like if you do not read as a man, you're an idiot. You're an idiot.
Yeah, no, look, he's just said non-fiction is acceptable.
Well, non-fiction is absolutely perfectly fine, and like most of the stuff I read is probably history. But
I thought this was probably what he was getting at.
Yeah, but I mainly read history, but I certainly read good historical novels too. And because I read history, I can tell if they're good or not. You know, as inaccurate. But the idea that reading is female, this is something where I would totally go with Sojo. When I was growing up in Southeast London as a child in the 1980s, late 70s and 80s, it was absolute. Working class blokes didn't read. They didn't. And it was the saddest thing. It was the bloody saddest thing. Like I had this, because I like popped the wag from school for about 18 months. I ended up getting private tuition and going to a further education college when I was 14, which you're not supposed to do until you're 16. And the second private tutor I had was a Church of England vicar who'd been born in India, and like pre the First World War. He was a very old chap. And when he came to my house to visit me, because we had a like 4-shelf bookcase, he said, "Oh my God, you guys have got books," because like he just didn't see any more books where I lived in Bermondsey.
I just want to fight back.
And can I just say, he gave me as a gift Tennyson, a complete works of Tennyson. So you know, whatever. But no, reading is not female. Reading's a male thing to do, because learning and making yourself better, which is what we've been talking about on this stream, is a male thing. What you do to make yourself the best bloke you can be.
As I say, I thought he was talking about fiction, and I do want to fight back on this, because I think that the idea of seeding, of allowing the concept of fiction writing to be completely taken by us dropping it and saying, "Oh no, I can't do that. It's a feminine trait." I think there are expressions of the human existence that are found in fictional literature that can only be expressed through fiction. Sometimes fiction can have explanatory power of the truth more than a non-fiction book can. You know, there's elements that can reveal themselves through fiction that I think. I don't understand why people have this this attitude towards fiction writing. there's a lot of crap out there. I completely agree. But why seed the ground and say, oh well, we're just not going to allow?
There's good and bad fiction. I mean, essentially, William Shakespeare, as someone mentioned in the chat, was writing fiction, but he was writing damn good fiction.
Yeah, I understand that this guy was joking around, but it is an actual argument I've heard that reading fiction just is a waste of time. And yeah, bad fiction is probably one of the biggest time sinks you can waste your life in.
Oh yeah.
But decent fiction allows you to tackle certain subjects in ways that non-fiction just wouldn't put you in the mindset for.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But like I said, you need to read enough that you can discern good and bad fiction. I mean, like somebody said, don't read Mills and Boon. Well, obviously not. But when you're talking just about reading, I mean, somebody in the chat much earlier, mentioned reading Carlyle, and also the German chap who wrote Storm of Steel. Yeah, I can't remember his name now. Ernst Junger, that's it. And like Ernst Junger was a man of action, obviously. Read his book, or that book for a start. But he still thought it was worth writing it, and it's not written for chicks. Trust me, mate. It's not. It's written for other men. So reading, no, it's not a female trait at all. It's a male trait. In fact, I kind of guess that's what the Albion was saying, is that, women read lots of shit, just like they watch lots of shit TV, even good women. My woman used to like Big Brother. I wouldn't have spewed on Big Brother, frankly, but she used to like it. And she was a good chick. But women like crap. Doesn't mean we have to.
True.
Kipling, H.G. Wells, H.G. Wells is good. I'd also say Kipling, excellent fiction. Kim, for example, is something that even Indians like, because it's such an accurate portrayal of India in the 19th century. Another one would be the Sherlock Holmes stories by
Arthur Conan Doyle.
Arthur Conan Doyle,
fantastic.
Yeah. That sort of fiction is well worth reading.
Yes, because it gives you a feel. I mean, the Sign of Four to me gives you more of a feel of late Victorian London than you're going to feel through almost anything else you could read. I wouldn't usually want to self-promote, but it does seem like an appropriate time to mention that I do.
By all means, go on.
That we do have regular fiction streams in which me and my co-host take a look at fiction that is worth reading every few weeks. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a stream on The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. And someone mentioned Welbeck in the chat. We're going to be looking at Serotonin in a couple of months. So, yeah, if people are not interested in fiction or are interested, then come on over and we can try and convert you to reading some decent fiction.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. It's like, read classy fiction, don't read shit. Because there is loads of shit out there. Don't waste your time on that. But then don't waste your time on soap operas. It's like when we were talking about making videos. There are loads of shit videos on YouTube, Even from the right, there are loads of shit videos on YouTube.
Name them.
Oh, fuck me, no. Have we got another 5 hours? No.
I'm only kidding.
Yeah, I knew you were. But, but you've got to be able to discern stuff. But the way you get to be able to discern stuff is you have to take stuff in. You see what I mean? Like you can't discern what is good history, what is good historical fiction, for example, unless you've read a lot of history. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Pep, UKIP's vids are great. Were great. I mean, I wish he was still on YouTube. I would happily have him on the stream. I used to love his videos, which always had lots of film of old time UK in them. I thought he made really great
He's
videos.
still making videos.
But not on YouTube? Where
No,
is
his
he?
new YouTube channel, I think, is called Two Kipper.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, as in TOO?
TWO
Oh, cool.
KIPPER.
Can you DM me that on Discord or something, please, Adam? Because
Yeah, sure.
I'll definitely go and subscribe to that. I love those old videos of like Britain anytime from like 1890 up to about 1950, because it shows what absolute bollocks the left and the mainstream media and the modern Conservative Party talk about Britain these days. You know, it wasn't this supposedly, in inverted commas, diverse place back then. It just wasn't. And it annoys the fuck out of me that so many young people today don't know any better because they had this indoctrination and propaganda when they were at school.
I do recommend to people that if you find videos that you do consider to be, worthy art, that you download them, because people can very quickly disappear with their back catalogue.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, okay. Well, we will definitely have a look at that stuff. All right, the final subject for today, and please, guys, don't all run away, and I know you will. I'm going to talk about something that the British government has just done. And someone asked me before we started, did I know anything about Challenger 3? Challenger 3 is going to be the updated British main battle tank. It's going to have a 120 millimeter smoothbore gun rather than a rifle, because that allows it to use more diverse ammunition, which is good. They're only going to build 158 of them, as far as I'm aware, whereas in the 1980s, Britain had almost 1,000 main battle tanks. So we're going to have 158, but I mean, that's better than Holland, which doesn't have any at all because they got rid of them.
Right, but when we had Challenger 2s, though, they weren't like hundreds of them just in storage.
Yeah, some of them were, yeah.
And I mean, didn't they change to smoothbore as well during the Challenger 2 era?
No. The Challenger 3 will be the problem with Challenger 2 was the rifled gun, because to get through modern armors, you need a longer penetrator, and you couldn't do that with a rifled gun, which is why Challenger 3 is going to have a smoothbore gun. Okay. So that's all good, except for there's only going to be 158 of them. That's 2 regiments, basically. And that's cool. But what the British government have just announced is that the Warrior infantry armoured fighting vehicle, which is one of the best infantry armoured fighting vehicles in the world, and has been for quite a few years now, it's got nice thick armour, it's fast, it's got a 30 millimeter gun, which ain't bad, but the plan was to upgrade it to a 40 millimeter short case gun, and that's been abandoned now. And Warrior's going to be retired, which basically means that your new British Challenger 3 battle tanks are not going to have infantry that can go along with them against anyone with anything other than a .50 caliber machine gun. Because the Boxer, which is the 8x8 armoured box that the British Army is buying, is basically less well armoured than the old FE 432, which was built in the 1960s, and is vastly less well armoured than the Warrior, and armed, vastly less well armed than the Warrior as well. And ever since the British invented the tank in 1915, and I guess many British people don't even know that Britain was the country that invented the tank. The way you have to go, one of the basics of like tactics and strategy, tactics more, is separate your tanks from your infantry, because if you can do that, you can kill them both separately. Tanks and infantry together are very powerful. Separated, they both have weaknesses, and you can kill them. And that's what you want to do. And what is going to happen with this idea of like British infantry only having shitty armored boxes with 8 wheels called Boxer, is that the British infantry are going to get fucking killed, and the tanks aren't. It's ridiculous, frankly, and it's typical, absolutely typical of the British government. If you're going to have an armoured brigade, which is the idea of the two Challenger tank regiments, you need to have infantry that can keep up with them and is well enough protected that they're not all going to die to the stuff that's being fired at the tanks. And I still say, and I've always said it, that the British Army, at the size it is now, would be destroyed in about 2 weeks, even if it was winning against a major power like China or Russia. Even if it was winning, in 2 weeks, it'd all be dead. In a conventional war. But like with Boxer instead of Warrior, you can probably shorten that by half, and it is a ridiculous decision. And it goes back to when Yugoslavia was breaking up, the Soviets used some of their what were they called, MBT-60s or something like that, which were an 8-wheeled armored box, but only armored up to like it would stop a heavy machine gun, but nothing much more than that. And because they were able to go fast on roads, they arrived in places like airfields, etc., which NATO would have preferred to capture first. And the Americans, because they had tracked armored fighting vehicles and tanks, and because they had to move from the other side of the world, took longer to get there. And so because of this, and trust me, it was just because of this, the Americans said, oh no, we've got to have 8x8 armored boxes. And so they bought their own version of 8x8 armored boxes, and they're called strike brigades, I believe, or something like that. And the British, because the British Army does everything that the Americans do, said, well, we're going to do the same thing. And they bought Boxer eventually, after a lot of fucking around, and a lot of wasted money. And there's a dude who I can't remember what his name is now, but I don't like him very much, but he's written an enormous blog on all this stuff, which is entirely correct, even though I don't like him because he doesn't like British aircraft carriers. But he's written an enormous blog on this stuff, which is entirely right. And all of this stuff about the 8x8s to me is crap, because once the 8x8 stuff is fine until you come up against someone with proper armor, and then the 8x8 wheeled stuff will get blown to smithereens and all the blokes inside them will get killed. So it's nonsense. It's great if you're not facing an enemy that's got like any heavy weapons. Sure, they're cool, you know. But as soon as you come up against somebody that's got like actual anti-tank guided weapons or recoilless rifles or even 30mm cannons, etc., you're going to lose and you're going to get killed. And the decision to retire Warrior instead of upgrading it, which is what they were going to do, is an idiot decision by the British government. People are talking about what's this fucking thing called? Hang on, I'm going to have to remember that. The Britain has this fucking stupid. Hang on, I need to look this up. Give me 1 second, guys. Where are we? Here we go. Not the right one. That's ridiculous. What did I just do? I'm trying to remember what these things are called now. and I can't find them. I'm sure I will. Oh yeah, Ajax. Ajax is this British Army reconnaissance vehicle, which all the press and media and Forces TV, etc., were trying to say was the greatest thing since sliced bread. What it actually is huge for a reconnaissance vehicle. It's very big. It's only got a 40mm gun on it. It's too big to be moved by the Air Force, so it's not mobile, so you can't send it to like shitholes in the third world very easily. You've got to use the Royal Navy or ships to do that. And it will get destroyed by even the most crap, like a T-54, which is the oldest main battle tank, which is still around in service, will destroy any Ajax. It'll, like, even a T-54, which is a 1950s tank, will blow it up and kill everyone in it. But the British Army somehow thinks that somehow the Ajax is a great thing to have. And the idea was we were going to put that 40mm gun that Ajax has on the Warrior in place of the 30mm Raden it has at the moment. The Raden is like, it's getting on. It's not a bad gun, but it's getting old. And it fires like 3-round bursts, basically. The 40mm is a much more powerful and effective gun. More expensive ammunition, but there you go. But like retiring Warrior and not replacing it with something is just fucking stupid. And I would not want to be the British infantry in boxers trying to keep up with these wonderful new Challenger 3 tanks in a Boxer 8x8 armoured box, which is paper thin in terms of armour. You know, the Boxer armour won't keep out anything much above a heavy machine gun. It's ridiculous. And that's all I have to say on that subject, unless anyone else does.
No.
I mean, look,
my speciality.
I've got to say, look, I absolutely appreciate that the Royal Navy has to be the main British Armed Forces. Like, the Royal Navy is the most important British Armed Force. Absolutely is. Ozzy, I am not assuming there will be Kursk-style tank battles. Not at all. But what I am assuming is that if you're facing an enemy and you need tanks and armoured fighting vehicles to break through their position, which if they are a near-peer enemy, let's say they're China or Russia or almost anybody who's not a third world shithole full of ragheads, you are going to need armoured fighting vehicles to break through their position. And if you don't have a good armoured infantry fighting vehicle like Warrior, your infantry will not be able to keep up with your tanks. Your infantry and tanks will get separated, and they will both be defeated in detail. And that's what's going to happen. And like, that's obvious. And the mere fact that the high-ups in the British Army couldn't successfully argue that to the British government shows you what a fucking state the very senior officers in the British Army are today.
Is there actually any reason to believe that the norm that's been established, which is fighting insurgencies in the Middle East, is actually going to continue?
Well, no, there isn't. I mean, look, we've covered this again, and I've talked about it many times. If there is not a war that involves Britain with China in the next 10 years, I'll be amazed. I don't want it to happen, but I'm absolutely certain sure it's going to. And I hope to God that we have the sense to make it mainly a naval and air war, which at the moment we can just about win. 10 years' time, we won't, but at the moment we could just about win that. But that's still going to involve a certain amount of fighting on islands and so on. So you're also going to need some land forces like Marines and so on, for sure. And, you know, the Chinese have lots of tanks and they have lots of armoured fighting vehicles. Here we go. Aussie, the British Air Fleet is fucking pathetic. Not true, actually. Aussie, that's just not true, mate. Look at where it is in the world, and you'll find it's like in the top 5 or 6. So no, not true, mate. But you know, if you're going to fight a war in the South China Sea, the RAF are only going to be marginally useful. You're really going to depend on the Royal Navy and the Fleet Air Arm. And every single British air-to-air kill since at least about 1948 has been by the Royal Navy Fleet Air Arm, not by the RAF. There we go. Another thing most people don't even get. So there you go. Anyone else got anything to say on this stuff? I just had to cover it because it made me so fucking angry when I read about Warrior being retired today. Like, people had been telling me this is what was going to happen, and I just turned around and said, surely we can't be that dumb. But apparently we are that dumb. And like I said, Boxer, it's an armored box on an 8-wheel chassis. And it's got weaker armor than the FV432, which was an early 1960s design, which is still in service with the British Army, by the way, but there we go. Crazily enough. But Boxer has weaker armor than that. I mean, and great. So the British can move 80 miles an hour to where they all get killed. Very useful. And as I said, this all came from the Russians outrunning the Americans in Yugoslavia in the 90s. And it's pathetic. And the Americans are slowly starting to walk this shit back now because they've kind of realized how stupid it was. Whereas the British are just going, oh, no, we can save money. You know, money to the Treasury, the British Treasury, money is a far bigger deal than British soldiers' lives. Always has been. Loads of people were killed in the Falklands who didn't need to get killed but for the British Treasury. And that makes me angry, frankly. It really does. And my son's serving in the Royal Navy, so yeah. If you're only going to build 150 tanks, why not? Do you know what, Pep? There, I kind of agree with you. I would have probably bought 160 American Abrams, frankly. Yeah, don't disagree. Why not? If you're only going to have 150, as I said, it's 158. And they're not British. I mean, they're being built by Rheinmetall, which is a German company. So, you know, they're being built in Britain, but by a German company. So I don't disagree with you on that at all. If it was cheaper, I would absolutely say, yeah, buy 160 Abrams. Why not? Abrams is fuel inefficient. Well, yeah, okay, it's got like a flash engine. But who cares? If you've only got 160 of them, does it matter? Don't think so. It's really the gun and armor that counts more than the fuel in that sense. So, you know, and like I said, Challenger 3 it's being built by a German company in Britain. So is it a British tank? Kind of, I guess. But I just don't see the point in having a new main battle tank when you don't have an armored infantry fighting vehicle that can keep up with it in battle against enemy anti-tank weapons. Because Boxer sure won't be able to do that. Not at all. You know, I wouldn't want to go to war in a Boxer against anyone with anything bigger than a 12.5 millimeter machine gun, because that's about all its armor will keep out. Puff wagon, did I? Well, there you go. I just told you again. Pep, all the R&D budget for 150. Look, basically from what I can see, and I've only read a bit about this, and obviously only what's made public, but from what I can see, Challenger 3 is basically a Challenger 2 with a new turret and a 120 millimeter smoothbore gun on it rather than a rifle gun, which is a good thing these days. We have 150 unstealthy aircraft as fast fleet, an American-built strike fighter with dubious capabilities. Aussie, nah, that's not true, mate. The whole stealth thing has been vastly exaggerated anyway, in my opinion. The F-35B has frontal stealth if it doesn't carry anything externally. And to carry a decent weapons load, it's going to have to carry stuff externally, and then it's not stealthy. But I think the whole stealth thing has been vastly exaggerated. Like its importance has been vastly exaggerated. Don't stand a chance against SAMs? Nah, don't think that's true at all. And also, don't forget that before you do a strike, you're going to strike the enemy SAMs, which are surface-to-air missiles, for anyone who doesn't know. But so you're going to strike them first and knock them out, hopefully, before you do your strike. So, there you go. So anyway, I think I've probably said enough on that and bored everyone to tears who doesn't give a shit about the British Armed Forces. Anyone else got anything to say? Adam?
No, actually.
The Albion?
No, I think it's a good natural end to the conversation, it seems on.
Okay, and Sojo?
No, not really. I mean, you killed the viewership, so I mean,
actually,
whatever.
I didn't really. We've still got 30 people watching, mate. So
yeah, but when you began the monologue, it was at 47, and we're now down to 30. So I mean, take that.
Yeah,
take that.
Most people don't give two shits how many British soldiers get killed. It's always been the case.
Oh, come on now.
No, it's always been the case. Most people don't. Don't give two shits about it, mate. Anyway, I'm going to play us out with a tune, as I always do.
I'm a flying fish sailor just home from Hong Kong.
Hey!
Way, hey, blow the man down. Just give me some whiskey and I'll sing you a song. Give me some time to blow the man down. Now as I was a-rolling down Paradise Street.
Hey!
Way, hey, blow the man down. Well, a handsome fat policeman, a chance for me.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
He says, I see is a black baller by the cut of your hair.
Hey! Way, hey,
blow the man down. And them long red top sea boots, I see that you wear.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
I says, Mister, oh Mister, you does me great wrong.
Hey! Way, hey,
blow the man down. I'm a flying fish sailor, just home from Hong Kong.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
So I spat in his face and I stove in his jaw.
Hey! Way, hey, blow the man down.
He said, look here, young fella, you're breaking the law.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
Well, they gave me 6 months down in old Walton Town.
Hey! Way, hey, blow the man down.
For booting and kicking and blowing him down.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
So come all you young sailors that follow the sea.
Hey! Way, hey, blow the man down.
Put your vents on the wind, boys, listen to me.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
Yes, come all you young sailors and heed what I say.
Hey! Way, hey, blow the man down.
Stick clear of fat policemen, you'll find it'll pie.
Give me some time to blow the man down.
There we go. And that was a traditional British Merchant Navy sea shanty. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. Please do like and subscribe to the video. It does help. I would actually like to get to 500 subscribers. Not for any selfish reason, but because it would mean I can do some other stuff. We are, I hope, going to be doing an Old Commonwealth stream on Wednesday with Jobu, who's an Australian, and hopefully a Canadian as well. So we'll see you for that. And have a good day, guys, and thanks for all the guests for joining us. Good evening.